Hello and welcome to BonkTable, another round of Elden Ring and video games, as well as talking to my next esteemed guest, Ben from Competent Conquest. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Not very steamed right now.
You know I don't understand idioms, so you have to explain that one to me.
I mean, you just said I was esteemed, and I don't know if I'm that esteemed.
Wow. To me, when you said that, I was like, "What do you mean? You're not in a sauna?" So like, I guess that makes sense. But I'm like,
I'm also not. Yeah, I'm also not currently being steamed like some sort of clam or crab. Now I want steamed crab.
didn't you just get back from sushi?
Yeah,
Well,
it was good.
it seems this is you problem because you could have been hitting up some steamed crab.
Oh no, I did. I just want more. Not right now. I guess I'm kind of full, but like it sounds really good because it's delicious.
Man, we gotta go see each other like in person and not at Adepticon and actually hang out.
Yeah.
Vegas?
Probably not.
Oh,
Vegas is very far for me.
you don't want to fly again this year?
No. I mean, even flying, I was between airports and travel time. It was about 18 hours of travel.
Okay, yeah, that does really, yeah, that does suck. Like,
Some of it was because my first flight got delayed, so then my 30-minute layover turned into like a 3-hour layover.
ooh,
Because, I missed my connecting flight.
ooh.
But
I think
I feel like that always happens if you have a connecting flight and there aren't any direct flights for me, so.
I think there's direct. It's either I gotta do one stop or there is a direct flight from Winnipeg to Vegas. I know it was actually a really big thing a couple years ago to just get straight trips. And I actually know one person who I worked with about 2 years ago, and she would do her 2 weeks on shift and then go to Vegas for 2 weeks, and that was her whole like each month.
Yeah, I think I'd have to. I think I have to go to DC. I'd have to take a train up to DC, which already adds a bunch of time, or do like a 4-hour drive up to DC, in order to get a direct flight because I don't think there were any from Norfolk.
Mm,
At least not that time of the year. Like when I was looking for LVO last year, I couldn't find a direct.
yeah. Should we tell the people what we're supposed to be talking about?
I think it's Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah. So like, Sorcerer Kings is new, and people want to know about them and breakdowns and such, and like what they're doing and what's going on with them. I heard mostly from you and other people who participated in an online TTS tournament that you actually ran Sorcerer Kings in that.
I did, yes. Is that why you got me on here to talk about Sorcerer Kings?
Yeah, and also because I didn't know anyone else who played Sorcerer Kings to come on here and talk about them, and I also know you're a high level player who will have a better breakdown for them than a lot of people who don't get in as many games and don't look into the game at an analytical viewpoint and as much detail as that I want. So yeah, all those reasons.
To be fair, the list I played in that tournament, I had played one whole game with going beforehand.
Yeah, and I heard it was OP as fuck.
The list was really good. It was really good. I have a little bit of a problem with Sorcerer Kings, but I think this is a growing pains problem, right? Like they're the new faction, a small percentage of their codex, or
Their codex, like it's fine.
Yeah, a small percentage of their army of their rules are actually out. There was only one unit that we have stats for that isn't at least on pre-order yet, but I think there are 4 or 5 other regiments in the PDF that they just give the idea about what they are instead of giving stats, which I think was a smart move because since I've been playing this game, I don't think I've ever seen a regiment release with anywhere close to the stats. Like some of them changed like 4 times
Or
before they actually got released.
Or they just get completely removed because they don't have a spot in the faction anymore.
Right, yeah, like some stuff, like one of the Beast Packs, Goltor or something, I think.
Yeah, the boar pack.
The one that was, yeah, were like theoretically pigs or something, but yeah, they just got removed because they didn't make sense. And I know some of this is, I think ideally factions will generally have between like 20 and 25 entries, right?
Not bad.
Yeah. No, I think like you're gonna have between like 16 and 20 regiments and like 4 and 6 characters. And almost everybody in the game, since I just redid all my tiles, it was, except for Sorcerer Kings, I think the low was 19 and the high was 21 for everybody else.
Oh.
For total cards.
That's actually
so.
It's actually pretty good. So who was the low? I'm gonna say it was Dweg. Oh, it might be City State. I'm gonna say it's Dweg.
Not counting Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah, not counting Sorcerer Kings.
I think it was yeah, so Spires and Dweg, I think Dweg was tied at 19 with somebody else.
Probably City States.
Yeah, either City State. I think actually City States, Wad, and Dweg were all tied. Yeah. Actually, Wad might have been lowest. Wad might have been 18.
This is a gift for being Wad.
Yeah. Because they still have a bunch of unreleased units. They have like 3 chosen units that aren't yet out yet.
Oh yeah, then yeah, they're gonna get more stuff. While I think Dweg is done. This year
after Magma Forged. I think Magma Forged are the only thing that like doesn't have a picture in the app.
Yeah, but we already know what they look like, and they're gonna end Stoneforge. Like,
yeah, it's just the pictures go in the app. Yeah, Magma Forge and Stoneforge. The pictures tend to go in the app like when they go up for pre-order. So.
Okay, because I think they're coming out August, September-ish.
Yeah, September. Yeah, for City States, the last unit for them are September as well. They're clock lights.
Yeah. City States is actually almost done then? Sweet.
Well, I mean, like, Talos wasn't even a thing. Like, Talos is just a new unit.
Yeah, because everyone needs a pump daddy in their life.
Yeah, so they got something that didn't exist before they got Clockwork Hoplites.
I'm pretty sure they just had artwork for that thing, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we can have this out," and then someone started doing work, and they were like, "Oh, we could actually produce this right now. Okay, let's do it."
Yeah, I mean that is kind of what happens. Like, I know that there are plans for subfactions. What I don't know is whether or not where the goal really lies.
That was 22 to 25.
Yeah, well, that's what that's what I think it should be. You know, that's not what they've announced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parabellum's never actually said anything official on it. But I think I don't think there's anybody over 22 with complete codex. Because I think Spires... Yeah, so Spires have 3 things left, which will put them to 24. But I don't think Prowlers are ever gonna exist. I could be wrong.
I feel like Prowlers is when they were in their experimental phase of trying out stuff. We might see it in the future as a thing. You know how Chariots with the 2 stands and everything, and it was kind of like, what the heck is this? But
yeah.
Prowlers being a 1-stand brute, I believe, is kind of what
they're Cav.
Oh, it's a one stand Cav. I always call the Cav brutes just whatever that stand. I just call it the brute stand, but no. So
yeah, I mean they're
but it's sitting on that one, and that's all they're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, lore wise, they are basically Fenrir Beast Packs except the Panther version.
Yeah, because Spires got into this
Fenrir,
weird cat motif going on right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, Fenrir were made by Spires too, I'm pretty sure, because I think everything that's messed up is...
I thought it was just the Einharl jar fucking around too much.
Well, that was Spires.
Yeah.
So... I do want to recant one of the things I said on the podcast.
Yeah?
My favorite piece of lore. I think the coolest piece of lore is what I said, but my favorite is actually definitely how trolls were made, which is that they just ate, like, they got trapped somewhere and ate the regenerating Einherjar like a million times, and it permanently altered their DNA.
Yeah.
That's actually my favorite piece of lore, because it's just like the weirdest, most random thing, and I'm here for it.
Okay, that was good. I don't know if I'm what piece of lore I would actually, but I don't even know where the fuck I am. There's a bunch. I like kind of all the world building. I'm very much like into world building for lore, and so like I always love reading the lore that way and just getting into like the weird stuff that people are doing. I think I just like history and just realizing how even our own world history, like, some small decisions just come up with the most ridiculous shit ever, and it's just like none of this was planned, and like this is what's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about history.
Oh, I do. I wouldn't say follow, because that's not really like, I do listen or read about world history or like watch documentaries about world history, and I find that really interesting, especially like wars. Like, there's a lot of stuff on World War II, because it's kind of like the big documented one that still affects us to this day.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of documentation about that war, so that's why there's so much stuff made about it, and it's actually really interesting of just, like, seeing stuff that worked and didn't work. Like, there was one about, like, the history of tanks, and in World War I, just, like, how awful tanks are, and just how they made them better in World War II, and, like, how much a radio affected the effectiveness of tanks and communication in tank squads. But also before that, like in World War I, the tanks, you could take your pistol and shoot it in the side armor of the tank, and you just put shots right through it. Like, they were not that durable, and it wasn't hard to like, shoot them from the side. So,
well, now we have Humvees that are more durable.
Yeah, so there's,
like, we literally just have armored Humvees that their job is go driving around looking for bombs.
Yeah.
And by looking for, I mean they run them over. And then they get exploded. And the Humvee's fine because it's built for that. And then the people can walk around without worrying about running over bombs.
Well, they drive around. Still, if you're walking, you're not going to have a bad time.
Well, no, they do it so that you can walk. So they'll drive the armored Humvees through an area, and then the soldiers will drive the unarmored ones, or walk, or like move on foot if they have to, behind the armored one that has already set off any sort of bombs.
I understand now, thank you.
I know a guy that was literally his job.
It seems okay. Like, so one of the things, like, I want to say compared to like American, like a little bit of like Americans to Canadians, is that it seems like a lot more Americans know people who were joined the military than Canadians.
Well, our military's big.
Yeah, that's kind of like in my head why, and also it's very much like more. It's like being a patriot, and also I guess advertised more than
I mean
our military.
I don't know.
Like we get commercials every once in a while, but like when I've watched cable in America, I'm just like, wow, they really love America.
I think it's less about really loving America and more about there's a lot of money from the military here. Like, the military industrial complex, of course, is a ton of money. But even like glossing over that, there's like soldiers get paid. like, you know, if you get out of high school and you don't have anything and you go, all right, I'm gonna join up for like 5 years, you're not rich, but it can get you it can get you a job, it can get you like, you know, a lot of things, like a college education without the like crippling student loans. But you know, it also comes with like PTSD and injuries. So, you know, there's bad stuff.
People go
but,
in the Navy. Like, that's not how I put it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all the Navy. I mean, if you can go into the Air Force, you're good. Like,
yeah, they have air conditioning.
Yep. They have forced air conditioning.
Should we talk
just
about
like Sorcerer Kings?
Yeah, great segue to Sorcerer Kings.
Well, they're Maharaja.
Is it? Because I call him the Maharaja. Is that like not the way to say it? Because I feel like that is not the way to say it, and people make fun of me for it. But I'm not gonna change. I'm gonna call him the Maharaja.
I mean, I call him Maharaja. I don't know if that's wrong. If that's wrong, then I don't know. Send an email to Mass. Like,
I don't check the BonkTable email that often. It's usually sponsor deals for stuff that I'm like, yeah, whatever. No,
I did actually make a Competent Conquest email, and I have not posted it anywhere because I forgot it existed until right now.
Oh, sweet. I think. Well, I need my BonkTable email to like do stuff and look at things, but it's just like, yeah. It's not. I don't really look at the emails. A lot of it's just kind of like adverts and stuff. Where the fuck am I supposed to go? I've beaten this game and I've already forgotten where I need to go to do stuff, so we're doing well. People get to see me run around.
I remember almost nothing about Elden Ring. Like, I put a lot of hours into it and like beat it 3 times. Because I did my first playthrough, which, you know, is obviously a clusterfuck because I have no idea what's going on. And then I did my second playthrough where I was like, I'm going to hit everybody with 2 gut swords, and I'm going to go get the Raven's Cloak early, and I'm just going to jump attack everybody into oblivion, and it's going to be sweet. And it was really sweet.
So here's the issue. I'm in an area that I've only been to once because I've been in the DLC before. Except I came in through the back way, and I didn't come up through the front like I am now, and I'm like, where the fuck do I go? So I might just go and run the back way quick, because I'm like, screw it, actually. I gotta go talk to a random dude first, then I'll go the back.
Yeah, and then my third playthrough, I did no summons, but I did the thing that I always kind of like doing in games, which is, what is the most busted thing by miles? And it was definitely using the speedrunner. I guess not really trick because it is still skill based, but you can go very, very early to kill a giant snake god.
Yep.
And get his sword. And then you can kill Alexander to get 10% damage on his sword. And do a little bit of rune farming and pick up the I think it's cost reduction thing from the guy on the way up to the...
Is it Ronnie?
The mage's school.
Yep. I know what you're doing.
And then basically you can just use the weapon art from his sword and from like it just kill everything, and heal. Like you just go find heavy armor and you don't even care. You don't get staggered, you just use the weapon art, and you just kill everything in the game. Except bosses, you still have to dodge bosses. Like.
Oh, the Blasphemous Blade. I was trying to figure, like, I thought you were the Serpent Greatsword. I'm actually doing that's actually what I'm running with right now. So I've beaten the game with magic, I've beaten the game with guts, I've beaten the game with a claymore, I've beaten the game with magma blades, and now I'm just doing it with Blasphemous Blade and Sword of Milos, because I was just like, well, I got high enough faith, and I heard this weapon's real good, so I might as well just like play with it. And I want to do this combo anyway, and now I'm just doing it again, and it is super ridiculous.
It is super ridiculous.
Like, I'm even on New Game Plus like 3 or 4 right now, and I'm just like, yup.
So the most fun thing for like New Game Plus a million is if you dual wield the invisible like weapon, whatever. I don't remember the name of the staff, but you can dual wield the staff that gives like a 30% damage bonus to your invisible spells. And then you can just cast like the basic invisible nuke and it just destroys things. Like you can get it up hitting for like 1500 or something. It's just absurd. And you're just like, left click, left click, left click. Oh, cool, everything's dead. Because it pierces too, so it just like kills whole lines of enemies, and it kills bosses before they can move. It's much, much better than Kamehameha.
Yeah, common is. So I actually had to use the invisible spells and that staff to fight Melania, because she kept dodging everything, and I was like, well, she doesn't dodge if she can't see it.
Yep. Yeah, so if you wield 2 of them, they stack multiplicatively. Or they did. I mean, they might have patched it at some time between 2 to 3 months after the game came out. Because I am definitely a play one game until I'm just super, super done with it and then forget it existed type person. So I played it, I no-lifed it for a month or 2, and then
oh man,
and then haven't touched it until Shadow of the Erdtree came out. But I've actually been playing some other stuff, like actually more Conquest than anything else. I haven't really played a lot of video games. I'm playing I'm playing Pal World more recently, but they did a big patch, and a lot of that is because I don't have to pay much attention. It's like a semi-AFK-able game because you have a lot of stuff going on in your base. So I sort of play it a lot. I'm logged in a lot.
I got a text from my dad, and he's like, you gonna come and help me today? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you play a lot of Total Warhammer 3, and I'm like, man, sometimes I just get up and walk away to go do stuff for like a couple hours and come back and sit down and continue play. He's like, well, you can tell me about it when you come over here and help me out with stuff. And I'm like, okay, Dad, I will. And then he talks to me about Guild Wars 2. I got him into Guild Wars 2 back in like 2011, and he has not stopped. So it was WoW and then Guild Wars 2, and he hasn't stopped playing since.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. My dad and I talk about golf.
Oh man, my dad and he got me into video games and everything. I remember being a kid sitting on his computer and like playing games. And he was like, well, I want to play games. I'm like, well, I want to play games. And then he comes home the next day with a computer, and he's like, here you go, you can play games now. And I'm like, yay! And that's how this all started. There was one... Okay, so there's the original Fable game, and in one of the early areas, you can encounter a brothel. And he's playing it, I'm like sitting over his shoulder watching it, and he enters the area, and he realizes pretty quick what this area is. And he immediately, like presses enter or whatever to get through all the conversation, and then quits the game out. And I'm like, what, Dad? You just sat down to play. Usually you play for an hour or two and I watch you. And he's like, oh, sorry, kid, I gotta go do something else. And he just like runs off to like do some chores, what he doesn't want to do. But he's also like doesn't want to show his 8-year-old titties. Like, well, I found out when I played it like a couple of years later. I was like, oh, I want to play this game. And he's like, oh, when your computer was good enough. And he bought a new computer. I got his old one, and then I played it, and I was like, oh. So yeah,
now I get it.
Oh, he was being a good father.
Oh man.
Yeah,
that's funny.
We should probably talk about Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah, we definitely should talk about Sorcerer Kings.
I'm not editing this out. Everyone can enjoy us just having fun. Okay, so my first question for you about Sorcerer King is, why did you pick the faction? What drew you in?
Well, everybody said that they were the worst faction in the game, and there was a tournament. So I really like proving either that I can win with the worst faction in the game, or that other people are wrong. It's really a win-win for me.
Okay, that one's actually really fair. Was there anything else that drew you into the faction, or has it just been like you gotta be the very best?
No, I've actually been enjoying them a lot. I've been playing them a lot recently, even like just in videos, because they're since the update. So I have this like aversion, I guess is probably the best word, to mechanics that don't really require player agency, right? So
Explain this concept.
The original version of Sorcerer Kings I didn't really like that much, because before they did the update, because like it was just a lot of bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I didn't get to choose the turns that I was gonna have rituals. I didn't get to do any stack manipulation. I didn't really like the rituals just kind of went off and then set up elemental, and it was all kind of delayed, and it just like the whole thing just felt really like a lot of choices were being made for me. And now it feels like I get to make a lot of those choices. And I've been having a lot of fun with Sorcerer Kings largely because if they give you a lot of opportunities to find advantage. And which is how I like playing. Like I really like being like, okay, well, if my opponent's set up this way, then I can plan to just go last with a whole bunch of stuff this turn. So I'll add multiple rituals this turn, and then I won't. And then if I win priority, I'll chain off my con flag, but otherwise I won't. And I'll just like let the turn run a lot slower, so that I can do a whole bunch of stuff at the end of the turn. So either my opponent can't really attack me, or they're gonna get beat up by a bunch of units at the end of the turn. So just the general ability of stacking a bunch of effects and planning everything out, you can gain a lot of value, and I love me some value.
I know you like incremental advantage that just kind of like, well, nothing major happened. It's like, yeah, but you just didn't fall for my increment, or you fell for my incremental advantage, and I won. And it's like, yes, Ben. Aww. We have had those games where I'm like, okay, there was like a small mistake, and you're like, you activated my Ben card, prepare to die, and I'm like, god damn it.
It's like, oh man, you really didn't want to move that there.
Yeah, and I'm like,
why not? It's like, oh yeah, because your entire battle line is gonna not move for 2 turns now, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
I've done that to Carl a few times, and he's like, you're the only person who can do it to me, so I forget about it, and then I play you, and then it happens.
Oh man, I have a meme I have to build for the two of you. Actually, it's quite funny. I was talking to Carl about it this morning. But anywho, that'll come out when it does. So let's get into how do they play. What is their? So this is going to tie into like their main faction mechanic, and then like what you kind of described a bit of it of like how flexible they are. But like, yeah, how do they play? Like, what is your a little bit of an overview, I guess, mechanically wise, and their specific faction mechanic of rituals.
So the big thing, so I guess like factually how they play is you get your characters on the board and you protect them as best you can. A lot of people, I think that the army plays best with a lot of small units, and I think that you put the characters in small units and you use the safest thing. It's what every high school teacher tries to tell you. in health class. The only way to be truly safe is to just not touch them. Like, keep those guys out of range, get them charging up rituals, cast whatever buff spells or whatever spells you can. Just like, the abstinence method is best. If you put them in a bigger unit, then they have to do something, right?
Yeah.
The more points that you invest in their regiment, the more they have to do. And the more they have to do, the more in danger they are. So I like to run a lot of MSUs and make it so that, you know, I keep my small character units back. Most of the time I'll just march them on like 9.4 and then just double march elementals past them. Ironically, in the streamed game where I played, I didn't get to do that because I failed all my reinforcements on 3. I got 1. I got 1 out of 6. And I was just like, so then I had to... I ended up losing characters. That was the only game I lost characters in that I've played with that army.
Ooh, good.
So I was still able to like pull it out through clever scenarioing, but dice were not on my side that game. It made it a challenge. But so elemental is a really powerful rule. You activate a ritual, and then you get to do 3 actions in your activation with an elemental regiment. So that gives you a really powerful alpha strike.
So just to clarify, draw the card.
Planning that out's important.
Sorry, just to clarify, you draw that card out of the command deck, activate the ritual, then your next card, if it has the elemental rule, gets the 3 actions. Because I've seen some players mess that up, like that interaction up, and so I just want to clarify it so that people know this information. Like, this is how it works, not just whatever weird other way people are playing it. Because I've seen some weird stuff where, like, one player thought it was all elementals after the ritual get to go, so he would like activate a ritual, and then all his elementals that out of his command deck got triple activations. I was like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah, that is not what it is. Yes, the next regiment, if the next card that you draw from your command stack is a regiment, not a character, I don't know how this keeps getting asked, but characters are not regiments. So if it is a regiment that has the elemental keyword, then when it goes, it can take 3 activations.
Cool.
Or 3 actions during its activation. So that mechanic is really strong. Like, obviously, March, Charge, Clash is really good. I've used March, Take, Aim, Volley a few times. I've used March, Volley, off of a Maharaja casting the reroll all hits spell, and so you can go Conflagration as your first card, and then use that to have your Maharaja cast reroll all hits on a unit. It's only on ranged attacks, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then you double march the Flamecasters into point blank torrential range, and you average like 15 hits.
That's really mean. I don't like it.
It's very good too, because it's with torrential, it's 19-inch threat, and a lot of the time, you get to go into their flank too. Like, my favorite use for it is to march twice, get out of their line of sight, and into their flank, and then shoot a bunch of shots past their shields for a pile of damage, and then not be counterchargeable.
Yeah, no, that's actually really good.
It is really good.
It seems like the flexibility of elemental, like you just do whatever you want.
Yeah, and it can go on any unit, and it's really hard to plan for.
Oh, it's your nap time.
It's the dog's bedtime.
You actually put your dog to sleep?
Well, we put the nervous one in his bedroom at 9 o'clock. Because it helps with his independence to have a really tight routine, and he doesn't get to sleep with us because he really needs that confidence building from an independent perspective.
Are you a dog parent?
Yes, I have 2 dogs.
Oh, okay.
I have.
And immediately derailed to talk about dogs. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I want to ask a ton of questions, but I'm like, we are never gonna get through Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah. We'll stick to Sorcerer Kings. One of these other ones we can just have a hang out with Ben and Carl and talk about normal life.
Oh my god, that's the BonkTable after dark where we don't talk about anything Conquest related.
I mean, a little bit Conquest related. But...
Oh yeah, because there's complete bullshit that we're trying to do to each other and be better. What did Carl actually had a quote about you, I believe this morning. He was like, you were the coach and he was like the track guy, like the runner in the Olympics, and he was like, you have taught him everything you know, but he does not know everything you've been taught. So that's his issue into playing into you, is that you still know more even though you've been teaching him a ton of stuff.
It's like, yeah, I've taught him everything he knows, but not everything I know.
Yeah.
And I try to teach him everything I know, but things keep coming up, but I'm like, I didn't even know I knew that, right?
I want to be really mean to Carl right now and just say something incredibly rude. But I'm like, no, he's a good guy. I can't be just a dick for just for the funny jokes. He's not even here to defend himself.
Yeah, I mean, Carl's a very good player, and he will definitely. I have very little doubt that he will end up better than me, but he just he doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. He just I don't know. I find some way. I don't know. I just always seem to find some way to get past him.
Yeah, I know. Like, I've been that guy to War Machine locals before, where it's like, oh, I've been playing tons of games in a mass, and it's like I'm just not getting anywhere. I'm like, yeah, now go play everyone else. And it's like, oh, I did really good into everyone else. I'm like, yeah, because you learned everything I've taught you.
Yeah, and I mean he's very, very good. He's very good at Conquest. So it's just, I don't know. I honestly can't figure it out. Like, I do keep beating him, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure why. Right? Like,
oh, that means he's getting close. He's gonna have a breakthrough, and then we've created a monster, or I guess you created a monster.
I mean, I'm unable to go to Worlds this year, and I still want America to win, so I'm hoping that happens before Hios.
Okay, that's pretty good. Shit, back onto Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah.
Goes into my next question. What is, like Carl's strengths, what are Sorcerer King's strengths?
It's very, my list has 13 cards in it, and I think one of the biggest things that's easily overlooked, in the game just in general, is points that are kinda wasted.
Okay.
And because all of the characters are actually good, like, they're good at fighting and they're good at shooting, you really just, it feels like you're playing up like an extra 150 points because your characters are doing something every time you draw them. And then on top of that, the fact that you can add extra cards to your stack with rituals really lets you take a bunch of free actions at the end of rounds. You can just have more cards than other people, and I think it's hard for a lot of armies to get past 12-ish cards right now. And Sorcerer Kings, my list is 13 base. But a lot of times, there will be a turn or two that I have 15 cards. So, a list that has 10 cards, I'm just like, alright, just go ahead and play your turn, and then I'll do 5 things in a row.
Yeah, it's really brutal.
It's really brutal. I'm just like, okay, cool. I'll just move all of these units and position them however I want. And then you're like, you'll do what? I'll be like, I'll move all these units, and you're in a really bad place now. Or just, you can't really come and attack, because if you do, you're going to get shot by 3 units of Flamecasters. You can't wait them out to be able to attack late in the turn.
No, it's... I feel like a lot of players don't... So I've seen a couple Sorcerer Kings games, and I have played into one, and so far, that one game that I've played into, what you're telling me about them, I think my opponent in that game, like, nothing on him, like, he, Sorcerer Kings is the faction he got in the game with, he's, not... He's just started, like, about 2 or 3 months ago, so, like, he's still learning the game, but, I think he's kind of made some fundamental Sorcerer King mistakes that I didn't even know, because I don't play the faction and they're so new. Because he's like building big bricks, he's only running like 2 characters. He's not really like, he's getting rituals out, but they're not very, I want to say, effective. Like he wasn't getting very much value out of them and not chaining them into stuff as well as maybe he could. He wasn't practicing abstinence, the art of not of, if it's dangerous, don't go near that. So like,
yeah. So like, I switched over to the MSUs for the characters, just MSU Rajakurs, because I was like, the big blocks of Rajakur are pretty good and they like hold up fairly well, but it's just better to be further away. And you can't die if they can't attack you. So like, I just started running them and keeping them like way back, and I had a lot of success with that. But it isn't obvious, right? Because the characters are pretty good fighters, and like Raj has really good spells. I mean, Cleave 1 Deadly Blades is a great spell.
Oh yeah, like they're one of my like, I guess we can talk about some of their weaknesses, but because one of my issues with the faction is that the upgrades, there's some that are just like really good, and there's other ones that you kind of want or maybe want to use, but they're just bad. And then they're on top of that bad, like they do the same thing other factions do. Like I think there's one upgrade that makes your character into a brute, and there's like the Spires equivalent, which does the same thing for cheaper and then gives the character a bunch of upgrades as well, while this one is like more expensive, it doesn't do anything for them.
Yeah, so the big thing about it, I mean, I'm not defending it as a good option because it is 40 points for no reason.
Yeah.
But the reason that it's expensive is because it gives the character elemental. So like, your character is going to be like, it lets you get those Raj buffs on a unit that's going to be like triple acting. And that's the idea. Like, that's the reason it's expensive, and I think it was I think it was an unfounded fear, but I at least like see where that fear came from, right?
Yeah. So if the Raj is elemental, so could you ritual into a Raj who is an elemental, and then cast his spells, and then
nope.
You can't
character.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
Has to be regiment.
He's not a regiment. He's a character. He's not a regiment. So, so that still doesn't work. Because elemental has to be the next card you draw, has to be a regiment with the elemental keyword. But, putting Cleave and Deadly Blades on Rajakur is much, much less scary than putting it on Sword Dancers.
Yeah, I've seen it on Sword Dancers, and I was just like, well... like, they're a perfect target for that, too. Like, they have the attacks and clash to really benefit from that.
Yep. So there's logic there, right? Like, that, first off, he's good. Like, Raj is good. And he has really strong buff spells, and putting those on a more powerful melee unit is obviously relevant.
What other strengths does Sorcerer King have?
Let's see. What did it? So like, their units are just pretty good standalone units on their own.
Okay.
They're very good at MSUs. They don't scale super well, but they don't really need to. Like, you know, you got Flamecasters. Even if you barge charge them, right, then they're just a normal melee unit. It's not like they're bad. They're 4 attacks at Clash 2, and they have a leader, so you have your 11 attacks on 3s, right? Like, it's not terrible. And they're not horribly expensive. They're 15 wounds for 160 points. So you're not really, like, even in their worst case, they're still pretty decent. And I think that's one of the things that is really nice about the elemental units. They're just like, their worst case isn't that bad. So it's an army that lends itself really well to an MSU style of play. And I think that really works well with their army rule and things like that. So I think they have really good synergy.
Okay. Yeah, I did notice, like, the lack of support kind of hurts them on a lot of their stuff that you might think to make, like, into a big block. Like, I saw Sword Dancers in a big block, and I was kind of like, yeah, okay, but all their power comes from their frontage, and you have ranks in the back that are just basically being wounds at this point, and with the triple activate, you can kind of just, like, alpha strike someone with it, so you don't have to be as wound focused. Like, you're not just running up the table taking hits and chip damage. You can stay further back to keep yourself safe.
And their resolve generally isn't very good, which, I mean, we get into weaknesses. Like, it's 3, right? Which is fine, but it's not great. Like, it's hard to have... You're not getting resolve 4 characters or 5 characters to really have that resolve 4 or 5 a lot, I guess. And that makes a pretty big difference as well, because you're going to take a lot more damage. So you don't really want to be a big unit, because you're still gonna die pretty fast. You'd have to get, like, even if you brought, let's say you brought 6 of them plus a character in that big elemental block.
So yeah, Raj is resolve 3, and then I know a lot of the elementals are all like 3s as well. Like,
resolve the whole army's resolve 3.
Yeah, it's not bad, but it's not good. It's one of the things, like, in Spires, whenever, like, a lot of their High Clone Executor and the Avatar Lady are, like, resolve 4, and I'm just like, this is fucking bullshit, because they play 100k all the time, and it's like, oh, your character's resolve 3, and, like, 9 times out of 10, all your stuff is resolve 3 anyway, so it doesn't give you a bonus at all.
Yeah.
While in other factions, it's like, oh, put the hold ray in the initiates, and now they're resolve 4 base in their big block. And you're like, god damn it.
Aren't they 4 anyway?
Initiates? No, they're 2.
Initiates are 2? Okay. Yeah. Oh, wardens are 4.
Yeah, looking at the good units. Well, initiates are good, but for different reasons.
Initiates are good, yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, so it works when you break them, but then you got to get to that breaking point, while, like, kind of being stuck at permanently resolve 3 is just kind of like, well, you broke me, I'm still 3, like, great. Instead of being, like, 6 or something because of the unit size.
Well, and the stands aren't cheap, and they don't have support, right? Like, so you're paying a lot for these ablative wounds that are going to die a little faster than you'd like. And they're not providing any offense. Like, with Household Guard, sure, you know, they're not really providing you as much value from a resolve perspective, but they're providing you 3 attacks, 3 cleave, 1 attacks a stand.
Yeah, like, for the support, that's amazing.
So that's, like, that's the flip side of it, is you're like, oh, well, I feel a lot better about paying for these extra stands and not getting as high of a resolve from it, because the flip side of it is very good for me. And that it is that I get to murder things with damage.
I'm only here for the murder. Ooh, what's that? There's a shiny thing. Yeah, we'll get into, like, specific units, because I think some of the units are also not that great. I know before we started recording, we did talk about one of them. There's another one there I'm also like, this thing kind of sucks. So, like, if you're are the characters a weakness in the list? Because, like, they are the, ritual generators? Or you're just trying to practice don't get in range to die, and so you don't die?
So yeah, I actually think the characters are a strength because they're good in regular fights.
Mm.
When somebody eventually gets to them, they actually have pretty good clash. Like they're 5 attacks at clash 3. You're probably gonna take Shu'laat, so you're gonna have blessed on one of them. We'll get into items later, probably. I don't know. But either way, like
relevant ones.
Yeah, at least that one. So you have this situation where like your characters are also casting spells, and those spells are good. Like -1 defense is a great spell.
Yeah.
And both offensive nukes are pretty good. Like they're nukes, I guess, so they're just fine. They're hits, but Burn to Cinders gets +3 hits if you've charged a unit in to them already. And most of the time, you're planning on having your characters kind of go late because they're sitting way back anyway. So you probably can free just march charge a unit in and then start casting spells on them because they're out of cards already. And it doesn't, like I said in the Power Hour, like march charging is dangerous. But it's not if your opponent's already gone with all their stuff. Like, then sure, march charge your thing in there. Might as well, like, if you're gonna get a benefit from it, get them into combat, and then you don't have to fail the charge next turn. They're already engaged. There's a lot of advantages then.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good.
And you can more safely go for longer charges because if you fail, you're like, well, I can just try again next turn.
Yeah, I'm just going down my list. So we kind of talked I don't know if you want to go into more depths, or if we've kind of cleared up like what makes them good with their rituals and activation, kind of just out activating people and being fluid with what they can do.
Yeah, they have a lot of tactical flexibility.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Because that's just like on the next one, but I'm also taking this from the last time I did it. Do you want to go through their warbands and just kind of go down the list on stuff? Starting with the Maharaja, like what his kind of whole stick is, and then what he has available in his warband, and if we hit any duplicates, if there's anything that is specific for a character with a regiment that like this character does this regiment differently, we'll like re-pick up on, but we can kind of just cover them all probably once and it should be fine.
Yeah, I mean once is probably fine. I mean, they don't have a lot of stuff out right now. So, I guess I'll just talk about, like, I'm going to talk about Jadoo here. Because it's kind of the elephant in the room.
The best relic, probably, maybe in the game?
Okay, so kind of. It is. It's incredibly good. It's incredibly efficient. But it dictates your turn, and it dictates your list. Now, dictating your list is normally a pretty hefty cost. But we're early on in Sorcerer Kings, so their list is already kind of dictated. Like, if I'm just like, okay, well, I have to play all fire regiments, but I'm not really giving anything up, right?
Yeah.
Because there isn't really anything available. So I was probably going to play almost all fire regiments. Like, I maybe would have run one Steelheart to have a Cleave 2 unit that I didn't because of Jadoo. But as more things become available, I do feel like that drawback will be more noticeable.
Okay.
Especially as more mortal units come out. Because it doesn't affect them. And they're good. Like the archers already are good. And it only affects them if you put a character in them. But if you put a character in them, then you have these very low defense targets that have a character in them, and we talked about how those characters are precious.
Yeah.
So Jadoo, like, if you want to bring them, it's worse. As you add in more of that stuff. So it's a weird thing. I think the idea behind it is that it is there to bring up the power level of like single element theme forces. Like, that's what it's supposed to do. And I think it does that. The question is, like, it's not whether or not the item is too good. It's whether or not a list that works that way is too good. Because if you look at any of my Spires lists, I almost never run more than 2 copies of any unit. And if you were to do that in Sorcerer Kings, you gain a lot more variety. And if you but gaining that variety costs you Jadoo. But right now the variety isn't really that helpful, because like Windborn Jinn are very bad. They're just like solid 20 points overcosted probably.
Yeah.
and that might not fix them. I don't know. They're just like, you look at this unit and you're like, I'll just not take it. I will always take disciples over it, just every time, forever. They're both mainstays. Like, I don't know why I would ever take it as it's currently printed. It's just like so like, well, so that's a unit I'm not giving up by taking Jadoo, because I don't really need it. So then I'm like only really giving up, and like Trinvada's not out yet, so I'm not giving that up. And Disciples aren't out yet, so I'm not giving that up. So I'm giving up Steelheart Jinn? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give up Steelheart Jinn. Like, sure. And paying for the privilege, So, on its surface, I wholeheartedly agree. Like, pure math-wise, like, 30 points for the effect of Jadoo is incredible. But you have to look at opportunity cost. And as the army list develops, that's going to be more significant. Whether or not it becomes a problem remains to be seen. It very well could. I'm not sure. Like, I haven't seen the final stats on the like unreleased units, but I know that they're not going to work with Jadoo because they're not elemental units, right? Like, they like, their description talks about them. I mean, Trinvada will work with it, but but like the units that we don't have stats for yet are mostly mortals, from what I understand.
Yeah, I think there's like a Cav unit, and there's something else. So,
but yeah, like, so let's say those units are good, right? And now Jadoo is affecting like 3 or 4 units in your army.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot less exciting to pay 30 points for that then.
That's fair. So it's really just going to be... right now it's strong, but as the game goes on, it's probably going to get phased out as things in the faction become... I don't want to say like relevant, but kind of better as well.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe not, but I think it's too early to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the real question is Sorcerer Kings too strong right now? I don't think they are.
No, I think it's your one list and also your playstyle.
Yeah, and I mean, and also a little, like, it's arrogant to say, but a little bit of it is just, it's me. I mean, I won Adepticon with a 3-regiment city-state army.
Yeah, and then got told you were spamming.
Yeah, that was funny. I was like, I ran 2, 2, and 3, man, of like the only things that were in print. So like and Sorcerer Kings does fit my playstyle. So I do really like those micro advantages, and boy, does it give me opportunities to find them. So if I were to hazard a guess, I think Jadoo will likely end up needing to be nerfed, but I also think it'll be. I think that if it doesn't get touched, it'll be in like some lists. It'll be an item that's good, and it'll be good in people playing elemental themed lists, and it'll make that like a viable archetype, but it won't be in everything. Because I think that there will be good lists that are mostly mortals, and they just wouldn't benefit from it at all.
Yeah, so because like the archers, I think they're crazy strong for what they're doing.
Yeah, they're too good. Like, they're not insanely too good, but they're mainstays that are 10 points cheaper than marksman clones, and they don't have the buffs available to them, but they're cheaper. They have 2 inches less range, 1 inch more movement. I think 1 extra defense. I think they're D2 instead of D1.
Yeah, but oh well, okay.
Yep, they're D2. They're D2 R3 instead of D1 R1 R2. So like they're not they're not like broken, but they are a little bit ahead of the curve, and they are mainstays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. Well, actually, there's another faction strength that we didn't talk about that I just remembered right now. Warbands can take 5 regiments instead of the regular 4.
Yeah, that is technically a strength. Yeah, it doesn't like they want so many characters because of the rituals. It really just doesn't come up.
Oh, okay. Well, wasn't the rituals tied to regiments at one point?
Yeah. So originally, the ritual rule was still characters had to start them, but then any time a card was drawn from your deck, it would advance all your rituals, and they had much higher numbers. And I really hated dealing with that, like just personally, because I would start like 3 or 4 rituals or whatever, and then I would draw a card, and I'd be like, okay, I gotta change 3 dice, and every time I took my turn, so it's like, all right, draw my card, adjust a bunch of dice, and then they would just go in my stack, and I couldn't plan it the way I wanted to. In the game 5 that's up on my channel on YouTube,
Competent Conquest for everybody.
I saved a intrusive thoughts that I started on turn 2 and never added tokens to. Like, I added 1 token to it one other time because it was the only other ritual available until the very end of the game, and then on turn 10 it was relevant that it would have actually won me the game.
Oh.
Or I did win the game either way, but it was
more winning.
When we were talking through the option, the choice he made allowed me to win in one way, and he had a couple other choices, but intrusive thoughts would have allowed me to win had he made like 1 or 2 of the other choices.
Okay.
So, yeah, it just like basically he had options to either block me off from getting to the 3rd zone, but then he would have had to be in range for intrusive thoughts, and then I would have scored 2 zones and won by 1, instead of him getting a zone and me getting 3 zones and winning by 4. So because I was able to start that on an early turn when it didn't matter, and then just let it sit there for the entire game and keep it basically in the pocket, so to speak, that was really, really helpful. Like, the game developed in a way where I needed it, and I was able to use that. And the old version of the rule, I wouldn't have been able to. I didn't get that choice. Like, it would have just happened and gone off on a turn when it was useless.
Oh, it's really good, man. So Maharaja? What?
Yeah, so Maharaja.
What's his all stick?
He casts spells, so he's got the best supremacy in the army.
Are you saying he's a Sorcerer King?
He is literally the Sorcerer King, yeah. The Maharajas are the kings, from what I understand of the lore. You can only have one Maharaja of each court in your army.
Oh, okay.
I know currently there are only the 2 courts, but I believe that they're going to get the full Avatar: The Last Airbender suite. I believe they're getting Earth and Water at some point.
Well, then you're going to have the Maharaja as the combination of all 4 courts character. And he's going to be like 200 points or something, and you can only have one.
I mean, it's possible. Unlikely, but... So right now he's got 2 sets of spells.
Oh, okay.
You get to pick which one, which court he belongs to, and then elementals of that court are mainstays for him. Specifically, Efreet or Djinn. Like technically, the Rakshasas are an elemental, but if somebody says elementals, they're definitely talking about the brutes. Because they're basically the same. So. So you have Court of Fire. He has Burn to Cinders, which is a great spell, and it's just a hit per success, and then +3 hits if they are touching an enemy, touching one of your friendly units that has the Born of Flame rule, which obviously like all the fire elementals have. And the characters. The characters that belong to a court give Born of their court to their regiment. So a Fire Maharaja has Born of Fire on his Rajakur, for instance. And an Air Maharaja has Court of Air, or has Born of Air on his like regiment, whatever he's attached to. He's got Scorching Sirocco, which is... It's a weird spell. It's scaling, which it doesn't really probably need to be there, and its target regiment cannot resolve draw events until the end of the round.
Oh, okay.
That one doesn't come up. Like, it doesn't come up much, but I did use it against Aaron to prevent him from getting Bastion and regen on his Force Grown drones in one of our games. So that was cute.
It's like, it's going to happen once every 10 games kind of spell. Like, don't build a plan around this, but, it's nice to have every once in a while when that actual thing that it's supposed to counter is happening, and you're like, oh, I have a tool for this. Sweet.
Right, yeah, like if this was still the era of the game where you paid points for spells, you would not be buying that one.
Nope.
But that's not what we're doing. You just have it. And then, so the third spell is Wreathed in Flame, which is just a friendly unit getting Aura of Death 2. I'll be honest, 90% of the time that I use that spell, I am just casting it on his own regiment to heal them for 2, because the Born of Flame rule says when you're targeted by a fire spell, heal 2. A successful fire spell. So it's just to like kind of counteract some little like plink damage from shooting as best I can. But I mean, I have done some hits with it. I think I'm actually not sure.
Just it's there.
Yeah, but Burn to Cinders I've done a lot of hits with. So, and that's the big spell. Like it's the
Is it the
one
nuke?
of the yeah, that's the nuke. So one of the big things that I like to set up with it is I'll have like the Maharaja's like Rajakur as like very late in the round, and then I'll have a con flag like super late in the round. So I'll like double march the Rajakur up, and then I'll have the con flag go off, so I'll burn to cinders something, and then he'll go and he'll cast burn to cinders on something, and a lot of times, there'll be like an elemental unit in there to like triple activate near the end of a turn. That's usually when I put it on the Flamecasters. I was going to say Shooty Boys, but I'm trying to use the actual names.
When I played War Machine, there was Holden Forge Guard. What were these dwarfs with big hammers? I just kept calling them the Hammer Boys, and everyone knew who I was talking about.
Yeah, we called them Hammer Dwarves.
Yeah, I think everyone called them Hammer Dwarves.
Yeah, they had Weapon Master. They were great.
Yeah, I love fuck man. Or if you got a smite and someone was beside a wall, and you're like, I'm gonna 5 dice the shit out of this.
Oh man, yeah, that unit was sweet.
Gotta play some classic War Machine.
I played a lot of War Machine.
I for sure did. That was my entire wargaming background.
Yeah. So the air spell, his warband's pretty good. Like,
yeah,
his mainstays are elementals of his court, and Rajakur, disciples, and goals. Goals are not very good.
Yeah, let's talk about the goal problem.
I mean, the only problem with goals is that you get too many of them in the starters.
So, okay.
Basically, all they do is they set a reinforcement line, and then they die. They're like an okay light, but the way the faction works, it's so important to get your characters on the board so early that you really just want to maximize your medium dice. So paying for a light isn't really ideal. But the sorcerer does have a spell that lets them score. So like 1 unit of goals to set a reinforcement line and be able to score on turn 2 is not a bad unit.
Yeah. Also, it's
the problem is the starters all come with at least 6 stands of them.
Oh god,
that sucks.
Yeah, like I could for sure see 1 in a list, but and even then, whenever I was looking at it, and people were like, "Oh, I love goals," and I'm like, "Okay, there's reason for 1, but like, why are you bringing more?" And even then, the 1, I'm still kind of like, "Man, do you even want 1?"
Yeah, I mean, I didn't run the 1. Variations of my list did. I don't have a problem with 1. Like if you have a unit of them, if you have 1 unit of them, it's fine. It's really more of a player choice at that point. Like, I don't roll well on my reinforcements, so I want as many dice as possible. But like, if you want to roll a little bit, if you're willing to accept some bad rolls, if you care less about that consistency, like, I think there's pretty good value in the 1 unit of goals.
Yeah, that's fair.
It doesn't make you that much less consistent. it like, I went 0 for 18 on reinforcement rolls on turn 2 in that same Adepticon that I won with City States.
Oh my god.
And in my round 5 game that I streamed, I went 2 for 8 of my reinforcement rolls on turn 2, and then 1 for 6 on 4s on turn 3.
Oh yeah, and that was back in the time where you had to roll for everything, and you didn't have like an.
No, that was last week or 2 weeks ago.
You said Adepticon.
Oh yeah, no, that Adepticon was the first tournament. The Adepticon one was the first tournament with the select 1 unit. But yeah, in every single one of my games, my Warlord hoplites came on, and nothing else came on 2.
This game is amazing.
But I gotta give some credit to my heavies. They never. I had 3 heavies in that list. And they always came in on turn 4. So 1 in on turn 3, and then sometimes I rolled 1, sometimes I didn't. I don't think I ever rolled both of the other 2 on 3.
At least there was something, because it was just like,
yeah, I never had a turn 5 reinforcement, which I think is like 1 in 20 games or something. If you run 3 in that setup, but so thankfully it didn't happen to me. But yeah, I don't have a problem with one unit of goals. They're good. There are some scenarios where you can take advantage of them. There are some really nice things because of the Arcane Conduit rule, which is if a character ends a turn in a zone, you get to +1 a ritual. So setting your reinforcement line can let you like sidewalk in on a couple of those zones to get the character in early. So there's certainly value there. For me, I feel like that puts the character more at risk than it's worth. And I would rather be much more consistent about getting at least 2 successful rolls on turn 2 so that I can get 3 characters on the board on turn 2 with my automatic in. So I opted to not run goals because of that.
2 bad goals. Yeah, I think before the change, I think they have Bloodlust before.
Yeah, like the whole army did.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that was even worse.
Yeah, it was unplayable. It literally was unplayable. You didn't play it. The random dice played the game for you.
Yeah.
I'm glad that Parabellum has realized that like that's not the way they want their game to work, and removed Bloodlust from this faction and are planning on fixing it so that it doesn't remove players' agency anymore. People like their choices to matter.
I like to have choices. Yeah, that's like we should probably have a talk about like triple activation at some point. But yeah, when you have more choices, you can do a lot more things, and you just have more options to deal with problems that might be coming into you. So I'm glad they took away that like they gave back that agency to the players.
Yeah. I mean,
like, I was gonna say lack of agency. It's like no, they're giving it back because Bloodlust would just like screw over people. And I always found it really funny when people are like, "But you can charge from reinforcement." I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, sure." Like supposedly someone had it happen to them once, and I'm like, all right.
I mean, charging from reinforcements isn't like bad, right?
No,
like it's
and
it's not something that never comes up. Especially with Shaman Warlord, it can certainly happen because you can March Charge Clash from the board edge.
Yeah, and that's where I think it has value. But it's like if you know it's coming, like, and there's other times where it's like people start coming onto the table and they have to like be completely clear from the board edge. So and the regiments that have Bloodlust don't have like can just like march straight on. Well, then they can't flute anyway. They have to flute at the end because that's your first action. So like,
yep.
Things that are speed 5 kind of have a problem of like getting onto the table if they're trying to wheel as well. So they have to be in a very particular spot for it to happen. So there's too many. I find with stuff like that where people are trying to make it work, there's like too many pieces of the puzzle that need to be set in the right position for it to all work and align in like the Rube Goldberg machine. And I'm just like, I cannot be bothered doing all that stuff. It has to be like within 1 or 2 card draws of whatever's happening for the combo to work. Like you can't have a super long like 4-card combo to like have a 36 attack Siegebreaker Behemoth, and it's like you're giving it away too much. Your opponent has plenty of opportunity at this point to like do other things or just straight up kill the thing that you are trying to make work.
Yeah, the stars aligning mechanics are never ideal.
Yeah, so like whenever people start talking about that, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like it kind of got into the old Smite bomb of like, yeah, it's cute, but I'm never like, even when I tried to play it, I never got it off in any of the games. Like I think I played 3 or 4 games with like the old Hedgehog list before Heavy Hog, and Smite never came up because my opponents were like, well, I'm not going to put my heavy defense thing across from it, and just going to send chaff at it who are going to do damage to it because it's militia, so that when you finally do get it off, it's not worth it because you only have like 4 stands of militia left and not 8. So it's just like, it's all those things. Like it's There's too much counter.
Yeah, that unit always worked really well for me, but I can understand. I mean, it sounds like you played it very differently than I did.
Don't worry, there's battle reports if you want to see how I played it, so you could be like, aha, Mass, you failed at this step here on, like, step 36 of 104. I'm like, oh.
I mean, really, it's like step 3. You just, like, the way to play that unit, was you would run it up a flank, and you would run Household Guard next to it, and then you would basically have the Household Guard move past it.
Yeah.
So that something that would charge the Household Guard, and then you would countercharge with the Militia and kill it. And then you would free up your Household Guard, or they would finish it. You know, the Household Guard could often finish it off, and then continue forward. But the idea was that it freed up the Household Guard to charge past the lines, because one stand of Militia touching on the corner would actually just do a giant pile of damage if you cast Blessed and Smited. You could just pick up a unit, and then your Household Guard would be free, and then they would go charge clash something, and your opponent would be like, wait, what just happened? I just charged those Household Guard. And then you would say, I beat you. That's what happened.
I win! I'm the wiener!
I don't know if Brian's going to listen to this, but that is exactly what happened in our game, and he was like, oh my god.
Yeah, so there's a couple games when I played it where things would just get in the way. Like, there was never that... there might have been, like, an opportunity or two, or... Like, one of the issues I was playing into Nords, so, like, Nords are just, like, running around overlapping a ton of stuff, and you're like, oh my god, if you're just getting kind of bogged down with random crap. So that made it kind of tough.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly matchups where it's not very good, and, like, Smite's kind of terrible against Nords anyway, so...
Yeah, like, I think I did...
Though the unit's hilariously just good against Nords by itself, in that case, because it actually just, you know, charges and kills whole units.
Yeah, so at least you got something going on there. Alright, fine. Thing. I don't think it's here. Yeah, well. Next regiment. Rajakur. The better men-at-arms. Tell me about them.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if they're better.
Well, they got
they
hardened
are better.
1.
No, I mean, they're hardened 1 and resolve 3, but they're 5 extra points to stand.
Even then, at 110, like...
They're 120.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
they're 120, 40.
Paying for that hardened 1.
Yep. And they're good. They're a good unit. They get a free banner. They're 120. They have hardened 1. They hold characters. You can heal them off of like your Born of rules, but you're never gonna bring them without a character in them.
Okay, so they're the babysitter. That's your babysitter.
Yeah.
And, yep. Well, hardened 1 at 120 points, like that's a good babysitter.
They're a good babysitter unit. Yep.
Oh. I'm gonna redo the Hellbringer Drake baby cage baby cart, but with Rajakur now. Just all their bodies stacked up around the cart. Oh my god. Oh, I have to go over there. Cool. Yeah, okay. What about the Disciples? They're not out yet, but they're coming out. I've assumed you play tested them.
Yeah.
I believe they're currently under cost, but currently what they're doing I think is very good at providing long range shooting damage with
yeah, so they kind of run into the same thing of, at least with the fire list, because of Jadoo, you don't really want to bring them if they aren't babysitting a character.
Okay.
But if they are babysitting a character, that character is not in a defense 3, resolve 3, harden 1 unit anymore. So you have to be even more careful with them, and it makes Arcane Conduit harder to pull off because you have a harder time getting into zones, and they're 20 points more. But they're also going to be shooting. So they're going to be doing something instead of, just babysitting your character.
Okay. Would you? Yeah. So see, like, okay, I'm starting to see like a bit of an issue with 100K or not. Sorry, not 100K. Sorcerer Kings here. Like, it seems like they're kind of regiment locked in for what they want to do with their stuff, and we haven't even touched everything else yet. Like, because of their elemental rules and their Born of rules and Jadoo, currently you kind of just want to build for Jadoo.
Right. And that's kind of what I was saying about Jadoo earlier, is like, because you're not going to give up an effect that's as powerful as Jadoo for 1 or 2 units of archers. You're going to be like, well, whatever, I'll just, not run them, or only run them with characters or something. But when you're starting to give up those archers and like sword saints and some other like heavy cav or whatever, I don't remember what all the units are, and I don't have the PDF open. But like when you're starting to give up all that other stuff, I'm not sure Jadoo it remains a problem, because I don't think the army's a problem with it, and I don't think it remains the auto take that it is. And I think it actually it might end up good, because it might make the like elemental spam lists more viable, even if they're not optimal, as those other regiments come in. So I think it might keep them in the game. It just right now, because that's all there is, you're just like, oh yeah, I mean, you're just gonna take this. I'm not giving anything up, because this is the only choices I have.
Yeah.
So I'm just in the leave it alone, unless like, if the army with Jadoo is a competitive problem, which I don't think it is. Having just won a 25-person tournament with it, it was, my games were pretty close. Like, I didn't feel like I was dominating people. That's...
wasn't just like a smash fest, and it's just like, sweet.
Right, like, the army didn't feel overpowered. It felt like a good faction. And I say this because I played Spires in 1.5 when we had Snapfire on
VCI.
Yeah. And I mean, I even played with VCI at the beginning of 2.0. I played with Dwag at the beginning of 2.0. Those armies were busted. Like, they were a problem for the game, overpowered.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. They're like so 1.15 Dwag wasn't bad because of like scenario and how scenario worked, and they changed scenario, and then they became a problem, and then version 2 happened, and it was like, this is even worse now.
Yeah, a lot of things happened. So like, Dwag were the best attrition army in a game that didn't reward attrition, and then the scenarios changed to being an attrition game. Like, first and foremost, because tabling won.
Yep.
At that
tabling
point
went away.
So so a bunch of things happened, but the timeline is, it was first to 12, then it was play 10 turns or table, then it was play 10 turns, final score, tabling no longer wins, and then it was 2.0. And Dwag was pretty great in that like tabling part, because they also had 8 wound Dragon Slayers, and that was good. And ridiculous. I mean, Dwag, as it is right now, is a very, very good attrition army.
Yeah.
If you don't have, like, the reason Dwag loses games is usually because they have to break their castle to go get points, and then like they have to offer something up because they're falling behind. If they can just sit in a corner with a big wall, and you have to somehow charge into that and kill it, that's not going to go well for you.
No. Okay, so I never played Warhammer Fantasy, but was there was there objective-based scenarios where you had to get to a certain point in Fantasy? Because like I'm trying to remember battle reports. I don't really think there was.
Yes and no. It was there wasn't a consistent back in when I played in 6th and 7th. There wasn't a consistent. There wasn't like ITC, right?
Okay.
So you would go to tournaments, and they would sometimes have interesting scenarios that had a bunch of things, and you would also go to tournaments where, like, it was just kill stuff basically.
Yeah, and I feel like the kill stuff one because I remember dwarves being like an artillery shooty wall faction, and they would just at that point I feel like they would just sit in a corner and be like, "Come at me! I'm just gonna artillery you until you come at me."
Yep,
Like,
they did that.
that's not good.
Yeah, but there were more answers to things like that. It was a very different. Like you could have unkillable units, you could have stuff that was really hard to shoot. The game had dragons. Like you had flyers. It's a very different experience.
Okay.
Like flying units were move 20.
Oh my god.
Fly was just 20 inches. Yeah, like just there were other ways to break castles, I guess is the best way to say it. And in Conquest, if you're gonna try to bust through a castle, you have to kind of go through the front door, or like play the scenario well enough to force your opponent to not be able to just maintain a tight little castle in a corner.
Like, one of the things I'm really glad about Conquest is that they focus on scenario play to not have people just kind of like parking lot it up or just sit in a corner or
yeah.
Like, it forces people to like interact with the table and the board and their opponent, because like if they don't, they'll lose.
Yep.
And there have been times where like I've seen people like, oh, they're just gonna play it out. And I'm like, no, if I'm looking at it and I want to win, and I can just sit in a corner to win all my games, I'm just gonna sit in the corner. I'm not gonna just like come over there because that's the honorable thing to do. It's like there's no general handshake between like 300 players at a tournament, and that's like one of my. We're getting off topic, but that's like one of my issues with Foresight is that we write down a number, but I'm like, okay, you can just say whatever you want.
Well, I mean, you have to write it down.
I know, but some people are just like, oh, I chose 2, and I'm like, okay, cool, and like I would never check their piece of paper or anything. So
right, yeah, I mean, you'd only do it like if most of the time the decision's pretty obvious. One of my biggest problems with Foresight is that most of the time, like, we both know what the other person's gonna pick.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's only like, one obvious choice. But so it's kind of a non-scenario, but we have to waste time on it.
Yeah, I've had it happen where like we both picked the same one, and I was like, oh god, no. And then I lost that one, and my opponent scores like 5 points or something. I'm like, this, damn it.
Yeah, I mean that can suck. But yeah, I do think that the my change to Foresight I like, obviously, because I said it, but it was the change the mini game to pick a regiment that you're trying to kill.
Yeah, there's more control over it.
Yeah, and I mean, sure, a lot of the time it's going to be obvious and simple, but it's not like turning off zones or doing weird. It's not doing weird stuff with the zones.
I like the consistency for zones, that I don't have to worry about them or whatever. Like, I can just check at the end of the turn how many zones am I sitting on.
Yep.
It's really nice. There we go. Cool. Okay, so we talked about the mainstays. I think every caster or every character has these 3 mainstays. I don't know, maybe not the Sardar, but who knows about that guy. Do you want to talk about the let's do the Born of Fire guys.
Okay, yeah. So the Rajakur are Born of Fire if they're joined by a fire character, but so are disciples or whatever, because that's just part of it.
Yep.
So that, but elementals, there's 2, both Jin and Efreet. Fire ones are Efreet. have a ranged option and a melee option. So we have sword dancers who are there are a lot of generic hits. They are Clash 3, they have 3 impacts, and they have 6 attacks, they're move 6, they don't have unstoppable. Sometimes you roll 1s.
Yeah, they're like them not having unstoppables, like kinda not that great.
There is a banner to make.
Yeah.
Yep. And that banner's not bad. It's maybe like a little expensive. The hard part is that it's hard to keep it close to the character.
Yeah, because if they're in range of the banner, then there might be a chance that someone just kind of bum rushes you to go like snipe at your character, and that's not good.
Yep. Yeah, it's like you're exposed. You don't want to be exposed. I mean, you're Canadian. It's winter. Like, wear a jacket, right? Like,
you have stuff like you have protection. Always always keep your stick on the ice.
Yeah, keep your stick on the ice. Wear thick socks.
Okay, I just did. Oh, never mind.
But yeah, it's one of those like, they're a good unit, but unstoppable. If they had unstoppable, they'd probably be too good. Flamecasters.
Yeah.
Flamecasters are interesting because, like,
sorry, hold on. With Flame Dancers, one of the things I like about them is that they have a very good stat line to take buffs. Like with we kind of talked about it earlier, like the Deadly Blades and the Cleave 1. Like that's with their 5 attacks at Clash 3. Like they have a really good stat line for buff taking.
I mean, yeah. But there aren't any buffs that go on them if you're not in them.
And then
except for Jadoo.
Jadoo. Did you scream Jadoo every time you activated it? Like you got it off?
I did not.
Oh, then I'm very disappointed in you.
I accept your disappointment.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean, they would wear buffs really well if there were buffs for them.
I've seen a Raj in them before, and I was like, oh, that sounds really awful to deal with. And I killed it.
Well, and that's why Bound Elements is expensive, right? Like, Raj in them is scary because they do wear buffs extremely well. So putting a Raj in there and that is great. Like, it's very, very good. But he slows them down an inch right now, which thankfully we do know that's going away. Leo's posted that. But it might be a bit. And it's 40 points is too much. It's too much for like the ability to cast the spell to buff them.
I know, would 30 points be better?
I mean, it should probably be 10 like it is for Spires. Like
yeah.
It's just you're still buying the character. The thing is, it's weird because it sort of saves you a lot of points too, because you didn't have to bring Rajakur then. So you got to put the character in one of the killer units, so you're arguably you're saving all those Rajakur points. Because they are, they're worse than elementals.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't buy them. You're not buying MSUs of Rajakur to not put characters in them. So it's a hard, I understand how that mastery got priced where it's at. And that's one of the things that is different, about the Spire one is if you put the mastery on, it only goes on restricted options. So you already had to buy something that the character could have gone in otherwise. And that's not the case with Sorcerer Kings. So you do gain some warband flexibility. You get to avoid buying some types of units. And it makes it really hard to effectively price Bound to the Elements.
Yeah, okay.
I think 20 is probably right.
Just to not have it be absolutely crazy, but also
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's
Because for me, there's the drawback too of my character's in harm's way now. So I'm not that excited about doing it, even if it was priced more reasonably.
Yeah, no, I get you there, because that's because your rituals are where your strength of the faction is. Like, having the characters not good.
Yep, you need to keep the characters alive. You need them to start their rituals. You need these things to happen. Like these aren't wants. These are actual needs. If you're going to win the game, your characters need to be making rituals happen. Because if you're not, you are behind. Like, you need those rules. Which is another thing that, like, I think triple activation is a little bit too strong, or triple action is a little bit too strong. For the flexibility that it has in Sorcerer Kings. But the faction's built around it. So, like, I don't know, like, I don't think you can take it away. I wouldn't want to take it away. But I don't particularly love, like, things activating multiple times. Like, I don't
It's got to be
I don't think it's great for the game to have things take a bunch of extra turns. Yeah. Or do more things every round. I think threat ranges are getting generally too high.
Okay, and it's not just the range threat range, it's the melee stuff that's shooting across the table, alpha striking people. Because, like, it seems there is a bit of a divide between factions that can have more actions on regiments than there are that don't.
Yep.
Like, you can just stay at a threat range, and, you know, as we've said, march, charge, clash, like, you're in.
Yeah,
or
like,
just blitz something across the table and be like, alright, I'm here now for next turn, sweet.
I mean, it's very, like, Conquest is a very lethal game, so alpha strikes are very important. So armies that can do that more regularly do have a distinct advantage. I think Sorcerer Kings are okay because they were kind of designed with that in mind, and I think it's an alright ability for the faction to have because of that design. But I don't like that. I don't want the game to turn into a bunch of every thing's bad if it doesn't do more than two actions, right? Like,
who was I was talking? I think might have been talking to one of my locals about the new, like, boogeyman in Conquest. Like, you know how defense back in the start of version 2 was defense and cleave was kind of an issue, and they fixed that.
Yeah,
now it's
it was pretty much just defense, but yeah.
Yeah, now it's triple activations is now an issue, and it's like, yeah, I can kind of see it. Like, it's starting to get a little out of control.
Yeah, it's not new, because it's not triple activations. It's threat range.
Yeah, or triple actions on.
Yeah, triple actions, but it's threat range,
mm-hmm.
Right? Like, at its core, it's threat range, because fluid is fine as a rule, but fluid is the part that's really good about it is that it increases your threat range, and then March, Charge, Clash increases your threat range. And the other things that were, like, the reason that Household Knights got tuned, like rolled back slightly, nerfed a little bit.
On their speed?
Yeah, they lost speed, and the Mounted Noble Lord Supremacy changed. So that you couldn't have multiple units that were doing March Charge impacts, which isn't that much different than March Charge Clash when you're built for it.
Yeah. You Death Star 2 Household Knights, you can do a lot of work.
Yeah, so it's an old problem, like March Charge into impacts, if you do too many impacts, isn't that much different than a March Charge Clash at the end of the day, because it's from 16 inches away, I do enough damage to kill a regiment.
Yeah.
That is a problem. Because if somebody can kill you before you can do anything to them, then, that sucks. because they can put it can go in a way where you can't even counter it, right? Like you can't back up enough to get out of my March charge range.
No,
if I go to 12 inches away from you, but you can't charge clash me. Because, if you're moving 5 or whatever. So you're like, oh well, I'm getting charged either way.
Yeah.
And I'm always getting alpha struck. And it's not a good situation when you're always gonna take an alpha strike.
No, because it forces you to build your list a certain way, because if you know it's gonna happen, then you gotta you still want to win, so then you gotta prep for it, and your prep for it is literally just mitigating that alpha strike and then going from there.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, I know this is happening, and now I have this one build, what mitigates it, but now all I'm doing is this one build because everyone else is just dropping bombs on me all the time. This isn't fun.
Yep.
But
so there's some issues there. I don't know. It's not the same boogeyman as like Defense 5 was, though.
No, that was a whole other problem that thankfully has been resolved. Or is better to deal with, and factions have better tools and knowledge in how to deal with it.
Yeah. Thankfully.
Go ahead.
Thankfully, the nature of Conquest and alternating the activation means that at least, even if you do get alpha struck, you usually can just trade, you can usually peace trade out because the game is killy enough.
Yeah. And just... It'll... if you're set up for it, if you get caught off from it, and you're like, oh, I didn't see this coming, it's gonna be real bad, but if you know it's coming, but that gets in, I don't know. Yeah, you can peace trade for sure, and I feel like that's fine at a higher level play, but people who are struggling into it will just design their lists around it, because that's something they can control better than positioning and movement, what they might still need to play more games to understand better, to have better results.
Yep.
And that's kind of why so list building is kind of we get into I guess safety culture, kind of you know how in OSHA there's the levels of controls, there's elimination, I should know these because I go over them time. Anyway, it's elimination, engineered, administrative, and then PPE, what's your personal protective equipment, as you get lower on that chart is the more there's less safety between you and the actual harm. And so because list building is something you can control really well, I would say it's higher up on that chart if we were to make one, while you're moving and positioning is something you do in your game, but you're still interacting with your opponent who can do stuff for you, but it's also very strong once you get it right. But everyone could just build their list differently to try something else out.
Yeah. I don't know how much that's gonna save you, but it is something that can...
It can...
it can help.
Or maybe... Okay, so then maybe I would put list building at PPE, what's the bottom, and then move and positioning higher up, because if you're just good enough, you don't really care about the list anymore.
Yeah, I think that's... And I think it goes hand in hand, too, right? If you... The more you know and the better you are, the more likely you are to have a list that at least functions. You run into a different issue if you're talking about terrible lists.
Man, we should do a whole episode on just terrible lists.
Yeah, you can do lists that have 3 scoring units in them or something, right? You're it's my all... I have... a list that spams Raptor Riders
and Slingers
and Slingers is going to have a hard time because it doesn't have the ability to score. So somebody's oh, I only have to kill 3, 6 or 9 stands of Blooded, and you can't score points anymore. I actually had this happen at Adepticon with the one that I won with City States. I played against a Nord list, and I was man, this is tough, because he had 2 5-mans of Bow Chosen. and I didn't have any shooting or really any counters to shooting, so I was, I was just getting shot up. And then I realized that all I had to do was kill his Ice Yatnar, because all he had were 2 units of bow chosen on the table then, and like a unit of stalkers or something, but nothing left that could score, and I was ahead by 2 points. So
you just win.
So I just kill. I mean, I ended up tabling him, but
that's good.
But like, it changed my whole game plan to all I have to do is kill this one thing. And there was no way I wasn't going to be able to kill the one thing. So yeah, that was pretty big. But yeah, he flubbed a roll into shooting my hoplites, and he moved too close too. He didn't measure it. He was like trying to get as many stands in the flank as he could, and accidentally moved to within 8 inches of me. So I just got to charge clash him, and then he died. Instead of he could have just not been clashable that turn.
He's like, "Please kill me." You're like, "Yeah, okay, sure. I'll take the freebies, man. This is great."
I mean, it's one of those. He tunnel visioned on offense, and then was like, "Oh crap, I'm too close." And I'm like, "Yep, I'll charge clash you and kill you and take this zone."
Yeah, I don't know. As I've been playing more and more games and people have been getting better, I've okay, I gotta start learning threat ranges for stuff, because this is actually mattering a ton.
Yeah, it matters a lot. Okay, so Flamecasters.
Yeah, let's talk about the probably off the top or the cusp, probably one of the better units in Sorcerer Kings.
Yeah, so I mean, Sword Dancers are a good unit. They're a good, very effective melee unit. And Flamecasters are the same. They're a short range, but they're shooting. Mm-hmm. They're a short range, doesn't no cleave shooting unit. They have torrential, and they're one of the few units that can actually use it pretty well, because this is one of the things that's weird about Elemental, right? Because they have the Elemental rule, they're able to take pretty good advantage of torrential fire.
Oh yeah, because you could either double march or march, take aim, shoot if you were already within 14 from a previous turn.
Yep. And yeah, 13 because they're move 6, but yeah, they're move 6 range 14.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so they're 1 inch out, but it's almost.
But yeah. But if you already you can march to 13 inches just so you can set that up. And so it's weird because they get to use it pretty well, but I still a lot of times just don't. I'm like, I'll just take aim and shoot. But then there are other times where I'm like, yeah. And then the Air Maharaja spell, which we never actually went over the Air school.
Yeah, we did it with another character.
Nope, that's not how that works.
Oh, okay, fine.
So the schools, so the Sorcerer's Air spells are 3 unique Sorcerer Air spells. And the Sorcerer Fire spells are 3 unique Sorcerer Fire spells.
I'm never allowed to play this faction because I have such shitty magic dice that I can't play them to be effective.
Yeah. So, kind of. It's weird. A lot of times you just use Conflag to cast your spell, and then you don't roll any dice.
Oh, okay, sweet.
When a Conflag goes off, it automatically casts the spell with 4 successes. You don't roll, it just...
so it might be able to be a real wizard instead of, just fucking it up every time?
Yep. But yeah, so the Maharaja, Air Maharaja, has a couple of spells. One of them is +2 movement on your first march action. One of them is Lightning Bolt, which is just a hit per success. And then if they're touching a Born of Air unit, an additional hits equal to their defense stat.
What the?
Just a little weird,
sorry,
but you know, I get it, right? Like armor.
Yeah, if you have high armor, it's metal.
Lightning.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What's nice into like high end stuff, but does it have any AP on it?
No.
Oh, so then you just take it. Okay, that's kind of rough. Like, because yeah, you give them more hits, but then they're still defense 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
It's work. It's
against defense 4, you're gonna get 1 1/3 through. Against defense 3, you're gonna get 1 1/2 through. Against defense 2, you're gonna get 1 1/3 through. So it from the bonus hits. So it's like an extra wound most of the time, and it scales pretty well. It's even most of an extra wound against defense 5. So. But yeah, so it's a good little nuke. It does its job. I have definitely march charged my air Rajakur's unit into things to cast lightning bolts on them. But then he also has a spell that is called Homing Winds, which gives a friendly regiment reroll all failed hit rolls performing a volley. And this is where Flamecasters Torrential gets great.
And you're doing this there's that run relic that you have that I'm also Jadoo. There we go. Doesn't that tie in together with it as well?
I mean, Jadoo doesn't tie in with the Homing Wind spell. They actually don't work together at all. Because you're already rerolling everything with Homing Winds.
Oh, okay. Well, fuck me. I'm
fighting
a boss. I'm getting fucked up here, so... I'm must continue interview and faction breakdown. Must provide good gameplay to see... It's damn, this is hard.
But yeah, so... That's another reason why, I think there's a chance Jadoo ends up... especially when we get more courts, that could change things, too, because they might have more spells that don't necessarily work with it. But this is one of those times where, it's pretty great. We'll get into the best use of Jadoo here in a second. Because we're going to go to Sorcerer pretty soon. And Sorcerer has a -1 defense spell. And if you make your first card Conflag, and you give something -1 defense, and then you triple action something into the thing that you gave -1 defense, it's really good. That's a very exciting thing to do, and you feel great about it every time.
Yeah.
So when you're rerolling all your misses, then you can definitely go march, and then shoot, and you average 15 hits because of torrential and rerolling all your misses with those Flamecasters, and because you're marching twice, a lot of times it's pretty easy to get in their flank, and that's very exciting. We like that. We like doing that. Things with shields do not like it as much. City-states really don't like it. Things with shield and phalanx are not a fan. But yeah, so I think we're done with most of the basic stuff. So we'll go on to the air, onto the Jin.
Thank you. I was just being the boss. So I'm I gotta hyper focus. Fuck. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much.
So Steelheart are good.
Yeah, those are the Cleave 2 heavies, right?
Yep. They're medium.
Wow, I thought they were heavies.
They're medium brutes. Yeah, we don't do heavies. The only heavies are monsters.
The real monsters are the ones inside us the entire time.
Yeah. That's true.
Oh my god. Alright, so what's good about these guys?
The real monster eats cookies.
Yeah. Man. We should go get cookies.
Cookie Monster's the best.
He is.
But yeah, so Jin are clash they're a good clash unit. They're 4 attacks, clash 3, and cleave 2. They're good. They have cleave. Like, those are good stats. Their move 7 too, which is actually really nice, especially when you factor in elemental.
Is that your only, besides your monsters, like your cleave regiment in the faction? Besides the monsters, I don't think anything else really has cleave. Yeah. So they are actually kind of relevant as a good hammer or like an armor pen regiment.
Yeah, I do actually miss them when I switched to this Jadoo list for the more MSU. But my previous version did actually have them, and I miss the cleave too sometimes for sure. Yeah, but they're a good unit. They're just really solid all around. And it's always worth noting that they do have an extra inch of movement, and that does come up more with elemental because it's 2 extra inches of threat on that charge.
But gotta go fast.
Yep. So they're good. Then they have Windborn Jin. They're not good.
Are they the worst regiment in the faction?
Probably. I don't know. Rakshasa Ravinar is really bad too.
The
Ravinar is like it really just looks like it really wants to be an Apex Predator, but costs 50 points more and has worse stats.
Because that's what everyone wants to be. Yeah, we kind of talked about him a little bit earlier, and I was just like, now that you broke it down, I'm like, yeah, there's no really reason to take him compared to the other one.
Yeah, I mean, like, Bakasura's got 15 attacks. The other thing is, like, they both have an ability that gives them plus 3 inches of charge, right? But one of them is against characters, and the other one is against monsters. Now, it's good to have plus 3 inches of charge range against monsters, but not every list has monsters. Every list does have characters.
Yeah.
And also, like, the duel from Arrogance, it comes up. It's actually very good. They usually deny it, but then you get Flurry. Like, I don't know. Bakasura is very good. I've run 1. I know Hannah from Germany has been running 2 and really liking it. I do see the point behind the second one. I just generally don't like I don't like turn 4 heavies. I want very little stuff to come in turn 4. That's the hope of the list.
Yeah.
If you roll like average, you'll have like 1 or 2 mediums coming in turn 4 usually.
But hopefully by that point you have the majority of your list on the table and don't have to be like, wow, I'm so far behind because I've only been getting my auto ins.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like, don't get me wrong, it's like built into the game to be like that, so I'm not like, oh, this is a terrible aspect of the game or anything. We gotta redo it. Let's make our own homebrew rules to redesign the entire game from the ground. No, it's like,
yeah, I mean, it's called a deployment phase, and one of the reasons I love this game is that it doesn't have one. So, like, the randomness sucks sometimes, but it also keeps the game interesting. Ironically, one of the reasons I don't enjoy playing Nords as much is because I'm not making those choices. I'm not adjusting to it. I enjoy, like, formulating the plan on the fly.
Oh, okay.
Based on, like, how I rolled or how we both rolled. But I've been playing against Carl playing Nords a lot recently, so it's how I rolled. Because, I only have myself to blame. I designed all these Nords lists that, like, never roll reinforcements, and then Carl doesn't like failing reinforcement rolls, so he plays them. But, whatever. I find that, like, it creates some interesting gameplay, and it can sometimes play to your benefit in a weird way.
Well, it allows you to, like, deploy and counter deploy, what gives you, like, if there's an actual problem on the table and you need to have something like fight it, you can hold your thing back long enough that, like, you can see where it goes and then counter deploy properly, so you don't have to have your, like, your counter run across the table and be out of position. What is a nice
Yeah,
feature.
that's why flank is just a great rule. Like, flank is so good, because you can just, if you do want to delay it, you just can, and you have no risk of, like, failing the roll the next turn.
Yeah, you're just gonna run. Yeah, you can just keep doing it until it has to come on, if it's that big of an issue.
Yep. Yeah, no, flank's real good.
We didn't really talk about why the Windborn Jin were bad, though. We're just kind of like,
they're very expensive, and they're Barrage 3. Like, they don't have enough shots for their points, and they don't really do anything interesting.
Yeah. Are
They have long range. They're Barrage 3, 20 inches, AP 2 for
AP
like 190. Or AP 1 for 190. Yeah, they're not even AP 2.
Yeah, you're not.
Like, they're just not good. Just not good. Sometimes you have units that just aren't very good.
This is one of them.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, if they were 170, they'd be good. If they were 180 and Barrage 4, they'd be good. I don't know. They're 20 points overcosted. It just happens sometimes.
Hopefully there'll be an update out in the next, like, 3 to 6 months would adjust them.
Yeah, the thing it happens a lot. To be fair, it's much better to have them be bad than good. Than way too good, right? Like, nobody wants to play a game. Like, if they were 150, they would be breaking the game.
Really?
Yeah, because you would have an army of them.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
If they were 150 points, people would run 8 units of them, and you would be like, oh, well, I guess that's a lot of shots at range 20. That's gonna kill way too much of my stuff.
Yeah, especially from that far back.
Yeah, and like, they're not that bad in melee. Like,
they're also mainstay. I'm like, why does Inspire? I'm like, no, they're restricted. The marksman clones are restricted, so like.
Yep. Well, and like, these guys are defense 3, R3, 5 wounds. You can't just charge and kill them with anything, and like you can with marksman clones.
Yeah.
So that's the others. And marksman clones are clash 1. You know, they just die if you charge them. Whereas, like, if Windborn were 150, they would be a problem because people would just put a big line of them out there and shoot you with them.
I'm getting flashbacks to the line with the Merc crossbows. There's like 8 units of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that, except that they all score and are actually good defensively and are fine in melee.
Yeah, Merc crossbows need a buff, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. All right. Do you want to? Does that cover him? What else he's got?
He's got
like everything.
Yeah, he's got everything. So like,
I guess we're doing all the regiments.
I haven't played much with the Mahut yet.
Yeah, so like, the weird thing about the Mahut that I know is a little controversial is that it has a gun, and then when you put a character on it, it loses the gun.
Yeah,
like,
it's a bummer.
I don't really like that, and then I kind of lose value for the Mahut because it's safe for the character to sit on it because of how tanky it is, but then it can also contribute with its gun, and now it no longer can.
Yeah, I think I feel like the upgrade gives you like terrifying or something though, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah, like I guess if you want to like, but the thing is, it has a character on it, so I don't really want it to get into combat anyway. Especially like,
oh, that's definitely one that you get into combat with the character. So that's the reason, okay. Right? Like, that thing is it's tanky. It's tough to kill, and it's pretty killy, and it's got a lot of wounds, and you can heal it. Like, if there's a character on it, then it's healable because it gets a born up rule. And then you can start running things like Prism. I'm gonna butcher it. The item that like does 5 like auto hits from the character as a draw event. So you can do that. So it basically has like double trample.
Oh boy.
And you can cast the spells out of it. it's a little bit of a bummer, but one, it makes sense because all of the guys that are on top of it that are archers aren't there anymore because there's a big old like character palanquin, so like there aren't any archers there. So I don't know how it's shooting. It's not. It doesn't have eye lasers. Like it had archers on top of it, and they leave for the character to go. So some of it, part of it is like lore.
No, it has eye lasers.
And like the terrifying one is a reasonable trade. It's much more of a melee thing now than, and then like the the spell will get affected by terrifying. So there's a lot happening, right? That it's not just this like nothing trade down. It's very easy to focus on what you lose, but there are things you gain.
Mm-hmm. Also,
and
it's an
like
elemental.
Yeah, it's an elemental. So like getting a Born Up rule is big. Like just so you put a Fire Maharaja on it, right? Let's just start with the most obvious.
Yeah.
So you march charge in with it, like march charge clash in. Then your next card is your Fire Maharaja. He draws it. He uses Pridgem, whatever. Does 5 hits to you. You get terrified off those. Then he casts for another like 6 or 7 hits off of Burn to Cinders and terrifying on those. Like that's a lot of hits that are coming out of that thing, all with terrifying one. I mean, sure, it's not the best into Old Dominion, but like, oh well.
Yeah, it's always funny when people are like, "Oh, the Old Dominion doesn't take." I'm like, yeah, whatever. Just keep doing damage. Just keep it up. They'll take it.
They'll die eventually, yeah. And like, it's Barrage 10, Volley 2, and you're gonna want to be moving with that thing. So you're like, all right, I guess you get your 3 hits. I think it's better with a rider.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit of a bummer to lose those shots, but I think it's actually like pretty good with a rider on it. So, I'm
well.
not. Yeah, I haven't tested it a lot yet. I know that Ewan, who's one of the strongest players in Australia, has been really liking it. Yeah. With the rider, so I am taking his word for it that it's good. It looks good to me on paper. I just haven't put it on the field yet.
Okay.
I did play test it when it was in playtesting. It was a very, very different unit back then.
Oh, okay.
At one point in playtesting, it looked very similar to a Tauntor, and then it was going to be bigger and more expensive, and I guess the model design went in a different direction, so it wasn't going to be a $200 model, and then they wanted the point cost to be a little more reasonable, and so I've played with this version of it a little bit, but a fair amount of things have changed throughout playtesting, and also like obviously I haven't played with it since the new elemental rule. And then, or the new, not elemental, new ritual rules came into effect. So, pretty different faction, to be honest.
Yeah, well, also Bloodlust going away changed so much about this faction, because before it was it's probably the worst faction in the game, and now it's actually has viability.
Yeah, and I mean it's very hard to compare the playtesting when a lot of units had Bloodlust. Because, also, it very well could have... And playtesting was different, too, right? Like, I was playing with those units that are listed just by name in the PDF. I had stats for them, so I used them. I didn't have any lists that were spammed. So, I was playing like one of everything in the book as much as I could. So the list to try to like get a feel for it. I played a couple of lists that were like trying to be more competitive, but I wasn't running nearly as many elementals. So it was like I was running Mahout, and it was might have been the only thing in the list that was regularly going to be triggering off my rituals for the elemental rule.
Yeah,
because bloodlust's bad.
And also, elementals were based on how many regiments you had, and not the characters gaining.
Right. Yeah. The rituals were all based on how many cards you drew. So, and the Mahout was more expensive at one point, and like, it was weird. It was very good. There was one point where it was definitely busted. So.
Yeah, that usually happens a lot in playtesting. Like.
Yeah, I mean that's the point, right? Like
you
design something that's really cool, and you're like, okay, cool, like it's really cool, but oh god.
Like I remember, there's the War Machine CID, and as it like went on through the years of Mark III, what was I gonna say? Like there was some like really oppressive stuff that like I don't know how it even got released to the public in the CID, like effectively the beta for stuff before it comes out, and it's just like there is no counter to this. There was like one war count, it was false year, that in the first week of playtesting, she had no counters. Like she just won every game.
Yep.
And it was like, why is this even being released to the people who signed up to be part of like the player playtesting? Like the regular playtesters should have caught this, and it was just like, what the fuck is going on, guys? It's just bad. So yeah, I don't know, like playtesting is weird because like things go into different directions and stuff, and it's like, did anyone have a look at this?
Yeah, well, and some of that is like, here's a bunch of really cool ideas, and what parts of it can we keep, and what parts of it can't we keep? Because you want cool ideas. They're cool.
Yeah, well, it also generates like fun. So.
Right, like you want cool, fun ideas. So, but you do have to like sometimes you gotta stop them. But sometimes you need to play them and be like, sometimes this stuff looks really good on paper, and then you actually put it on the table, and you're like, yeah, this actually wasn't very good.
This wasn't a real thing at all.
Yeah.
All right, so
like, man, this seems broken, and then you play it, and you're like, yeah, it's actually bad. Neat.
Yeah, it's like I try and there's some stuff where I can look at it and be like, this is just straight bad, and there's other times where I'm like, no, this needs to be played because this might have value.
Yeah, like one of the best examples is the city-states Agama or Agama railgun thing that you can do, where you can get like super, super far charge range off with your Agama, and it's like, it's really good at doing that one thing, but they're not that tough, so you get countercharged and die.
Oh, don't worry, I played this game, so like, please continue so I can relive all my mistakes.
Yeah, so you're gonna get countercharged and die, and also like, it's expensive. You're probably not killing a unit that costs as much as that unit. And sometimes the board doesn't let you go 6 wide and then do this giant fluid formation like turn and then do this giant sweeping wheel to be able to actually charge.
Yeah.
There might just not be room.
Yeah, it's like train matters a lot in this game, and there's times where like I see barren tables and people are like, oh, I lost, and it's like, yeah, because you played on a barren table and didn't have any defense against your opponent's thing. Like, this isn't a problem when you actually have proper tables.
Yeah, like Ash and Dawn are much more of a problem if there's no hindering.
Yeah, that's why I just kind of make all my forests like obscuring and hindering.
Yeah, most people do.
It's just kind of.
But like, imagine if they were all only obscuring and there were a ton of them. That'd be super good for the Ash and Dawn.
Yeah, or they were all obscuring and then perilous terrain, so you take double wounds on 4s. That was also super good for the Ash and Dawn. when I would charge out and just like have an Ash and Dawn randomly die.
Yeah, that's less good for them.
Yeah, we start on perilous. I thought like hindering's terrible, I hate it, and then when you lose, like you roll 3 6s and just lose an Ash and Dawn, I was like, I'm going back to hindering. I understand now, thank you. All right.
Yeah, I don't really like
Go ahead.
wounds from terrain.
Yeah, I don't like it either. It's just kind of like, well, my opponent gained value for nothing, and I had to go through this terrain, or I wanted to have the other benefit. Like, cool. Like, it's not. I don't know. It's like a gimmick mechanic. It's what I kind of feel it as, like, or like a holdover from fantasy, because I know fantasy had terrain that hurt you.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad. Like, dangerous terrain is fine. It does a random wound here or there, but it's not that interesting. A lot of times you're just like rolling these weird dice in a step that most of the time doesn't actually change the game, except the random times where it does, and then it's like frustrating that it mattered in this like 1 out of 20 games.
Yeah, it's not.
It honestly matters the most for Nords because they might get free attacks.
They might take the one wound and they're like, "Oh, let's go." You're just watching all the Nords players start running their stuff through everything.
It's just like it makes just hindering just works better. All right, so I think we're down to. I think
we're at the monster, the character monster, and the monster.
Yeah, well, we kind of touched on like. All right, we'll go through Ravinar really quickly. Yeah. So the anti-monster monster. Ultimately, like, Hubris is a fine rule, Fiend Hunter is a fine rule, but you look at this thing, and then you pull up an Apex Predator, and you're like, why does this cost 50 points more than an Apex Predator? It is not as good as an Apex Predator. And that's it. That's where you can, like, I'd rather have the movement 8 at Unstoppable. You're paying for that Elemental, obviously. And I guess Hubris and Last Word, but it just doesn't get there. And like all of the things it does, like the Bakasura has Cleave 1 and 4 more attacks.
Wait a minute, does the Ravinar not have Cleave 1?
It has Cleave 2.
Yeah, but
so you still have a Cleave. Like if it was against no Cleave, then I think Ravinar is a lot more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Cleave 2 against Cleave 1. So, I don't know, maybe we'll get Cleave 2 Deadly on the Ravinar. And an extra attack. And then it would probably be there. I think it would be playable then.
It's just not worth it. Too many points for too little.
It's 240 points for 11 attacks.
Yeah, Ashen Dawn. Aren't they 240? Or are they 250? I haven't looked at Ashen Dawn in quite a while. I want to say they're 240, 90.
I think they're 250. They're at least 250. I think they're 250, 90.
And then what? You get 19 attacks off of NSU? Like,
yeah,
like that's way more.
Ultimately that is the problem. Is like it's 240 points for 11 attacks. Like if you don't roll the dice, you can't kill the thing. Like, you need to roll enough dice to kill something.
Well, that was always, like, my thing with the Siegebreaker Behemoth before they buffed it. Even then, after the buff. It's like, it just simply did not have enough tax to matter. Like, even if you did get your hits, it was just...
It doesn't matter how good your hits are if there aren't enough of them. I mean, yeah, the math I kept showing on Siegebreaker is it didn't kill an MSU. Like, it couldn't inspire clash. It didn't, on average, inspire clash and kill an MSU of like militia bowmen.
Ooh, and that's not that's the bare minimum, guys.
Yeah, like they were not getting saves and they were getting ones on resolves, but it just didn't do enough hits. It averaged 5-ish hits. So that's only 10 wounds. Even if you just take all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
And Ravinar kind of has that same problem. Like, 11 is not very many attacks.
No, it doesn't guarantee kills. Alright, so let's go to the character killer, the Bakasura.
So he has a lot of attacks, because he has 15, which is pretty good. And he can sometimes get... Oh, I guess the one other thing is, you get plus 3 inches of charge against monsters with the Ravinar. but not every list has monsters.
No.
And you get plus 3 inches of charge against characters with the Bakasura. And every list has characters. So that rule is also always in one of these lists. So Bakasura is the go-to. Like, as it stands, you just don't bring Ravinar ever, and it just doesn't exist. But Bakasura is pretty good. I think he's a little expensive, like 260 is a lot, but Elemental's a hell of a rule, and he's got a lot of attacks, so it becomes very hard to say definitively in that case. Like, I keep running him, and he keeps doing well for me, so maybe he's just worth it. I wish he was slightly better defensively. I wouldn't want his offense to be any better, because he's already, like, very fast and very killy.
Oh, he's a 3/3/1. Yeah, okay, he's dying to shit.
He dies to everything.
Yeah, like 16 moons, yeah, you're dying to shit. Like, you're worse defensively than a Hellbringer Drake. You're dying to shit.
Yep. I think it's worse defensively than Apex. It has 1 more wound and 1 less resolve. And doesn't have Fearless. And it's 70 points more.
Yeah, it's not
now,
good.
Yeah, I mean, Apex is very good, so
Oh,
there
yeah.
is that part too. Like, I don't think it should be the same as Apex, and I'm not trying to like say that, but when you are comparing monsters to monsters, especially when you're comparing Ravinar, like, because it's an 11 attack monster versus an 11 attack monster, it's really, really hard to not look at Apex and be like, that is just better than me in every discernible way and cheaper. But Bakasura is good. The dueling on characters is pretty great. With Elemental, a lot of times you can like charge, clash, and then duel. Like, you have a decent chance of charge, clash, breaking, and then dueling and just killing their character. Or just starting with the duel, and then they have to decline because they'll die. So then you just get Flurry, and you stop them from scoring, and they use worse resolve and stuff. It's pretty good. So overall, pretty happy with Bakasura. I would like a little bit more defense for that hefty 260 cost.
Mm-hmm.
Probably just a resolve would be enough, because then he's up there with like Ice Yatnar, which feels about right.
Yeah, we'll do some stuff. Do you want to talk about the unreleased guy, the big shooty boy, or you want to skip him because he's unreleased?
Okay, so he's extremely good.
Okay, wow.
Right now. I mean, he's always shooting on 4s. He's barrage 12, range 16. He can move, charge. Like, you can march, charge, clash, shoot with him.
Oh my god.
And he might be able to march, charge, clash, shoot an entire zone. If there's a bunch of stuff in a zone. Like, I don't think Rolling Storm's gonna come up that often, but it's
there if there's 2 regiments.
Yeah.
I think it's funny.
But like, he's got dead shots. So he's volley 3, always take aimed. So he's gonna, if you march, charge, clash, shoot with him, he's gonna be clash 4 on the melee hits, and volley 4 on the ranged hits. It's real good. It's really, really, really good. I don't expect him to release with the stat line.
No, it's
levels of good.
He kind of.
So I don't want to put too much time on him, because I expect him to see some revision before release.
Yeah, like. Sorry, let me just look at this here. His dead shots. Yeah, being volley 4 baseline is something I thought Parabellum was trying to not have, and then he has it. So it's kind of like, what you doing?
Yeah, I don't really know what happened there. He was volley 2 dead shots for a long time in testing.
That's still good.
Yeah, no, but I think he'd be much more reasonable at volley 2 dead shots. Like, I think he'd be a fine model then. He'd still be good, but I, would be okay with it. I'll be honest, there's a chance it was a typo.
Oh, the 2 or the 4?
The volley 3 instead of 2.
Yeah, that could be it.
Like, I don't have any. I don't know, because I don't remember which document. Like, I don't remember if it ever went up in one of the playtesting documents to 3. But like, it could easily be when it was getting typed up, Leo was thinking, oh well, it hits on 3s, thinking volley 2 dead shots, and typed in a 3.
Oh, okay, that's fair. That would do it.
Like, that type of stuff can definitely happen, because Leo's typing up all the rules for an army, and then like, it's not released, so it's not really that big of a deal on double checking it, because it'll just get fixed later.
You want to talk about the Raj?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, tell me about the Raj. Like, why?
So,
what's his whole shtick? What's he good at? What's he not good at?
So we'll start with his supremacy, which is elemental regiments gain terrifying +1 well in range of an objective zone. So he doesn't have a supremacy. So spells, I mean, like, why are you ever going to take that?
No, because the
like, Maharaja. Yeah, he doubles the number, I guess, kind of, whatever. He adds extra counters to rituals, so he's adding probably 1 or 2 ritual counters a turn, and that's just, like, worth so much more. I just, like, these terrifying supremacies are annoying.
Yeah, because the Rajakur has it.
Yeah, because like, they don't work against one of the factions. They a lot of times don't really matter, because there's a lot, like, terrifying's like it's a good rule, but it's just inconsistent, because like, a lot of times you're killing the stuff anyway, or it's resolves 7 because it's a giant block of force-grown drones, so terrifying 1 didn't matter. It's stuff like that.
Okay.
It gets a little weird, but like, it's okay. If I was forced to take Raj Supremacy, I would remember that it exists.
Sounds like you gotta build a list around it.
Don't though.
It's like,
so the biggest problem is all of his spells have scaling. Like, Molten Blades is a great spell. Cleave 1 Deadly is great. Wreathed in Fire is Aura of Death 2 and Dread. Actually, also a great spell. Storm's Wrath is terrible. Its enemy treats all like zonal terrain as perilous, but it's 12-inch range. So like, it's kind of funny to cast on Ashendon and then have them try to charge through it, but like, and it's not much. Windkiss Blades was a lot better when parry was forced them to reroll 1s. But it's not bad. It's parry and counterattack. So the biggest problem here is he has to go before the enemy regiment. So these are all kind of like Bastion effects, in that you have to go first. But Sorcerer Kings aren't really great at going first in rounds, because you want to have more cards than people, because so you're going to have disadvantage on the supremacy roll, because when you have rituals going, you're going to have disadvantage on your supremacy roll, even if you try to run a lower card list. So you might as well just build as many cards as you can. Because that's how it works. Like, that's how the game works. So ultimately, that's his problem. I like Raj, but he basically has to be inbound to elements, or he's buffing Rajakur, and buffing Rajakur is fine, but not great.
Yeah.
Like, they're not that exciting. They're Clash 2, so like, you put these sweet buffs on them. Like, you put Cleave 1 and Deadly on something, and then you're like, oh well. But it's on Rajakur. So you want to do it on elementals, and then it's 40 points, and you slow them down, and then you have all these same problems, and also like with interference, the spell has scaling. It's if somebody has a wizard within 10 inches of you, there's a pretty decent chance you fail your spell. That's super depressing. So then, in order to guarantee it, you have to do it off con flag, and like at least that's good. But if you go second, you might lose half the unit, and it's just
So he's got too many issues.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things can go wrong, and if something can go wrong, it probably will.
Yeah.
And if 12 things can go wrong, at least one of them will.
It's Murphy's Law.
Yep.
So do you run him in any lists? Like he seems to have a bunch of.
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
I have him in lists, but I wouldn't run him competitively right now.
Oh, okay.
Like I have lists that I think are fine. That he's in, and I really liked him in a couple of I really liked him in a lot of games I played with him, but I just don't think that the way the faction plays, he works very well.
Okay. Poor Rajakur. Or sorry, poor Raj, not the Rajakur.
Yeah, I mean he's great at buffing a unit that it's not that great to buff your men-at-arms to the 9s, and offensively they are the same as men-at-arms.
Yeah. I have played the Devout Thieves Priest list and just gotten nowhere with it. It was cute kind of the one time, and then after that it was just kind of didn't really have a I don't want to say a spot, but how do I want to say this? The limitations of the list were very obvious after that.
Yeah, it's just not quite it. It's just not enough. Ultimately, it's just not quite enough. The upsides aren't enough, and the downsides are too much.
Yeah, it's he's not helping too much.
Yeah, it just doesn't get there. I mean, sometimes things can be fine and not quite get there.
Yeah. Okay. Can we talk about the Sardar? I have no idea what this guy's purpose is, and if he even is in lists, and I feel like he's not.
He's not. And
is it because he doesn't cast spells? Because he's not a Sorcerer King?
I mean, basically, yeah. I don't know. He doesn't do anything. Fear and discipline is a good rule. It's basically your mortal units have +2 for seizing. So if there were a good light regiment, light mortal unit,
mm-hmm.
Then I think he might make lists just because he would allow make them score.
Yeah, score,
and that would be kind of a cool thing for him. Personally, I think disciples should lose a couple inches of range and become light, because then they work well with Sardar, and
he can restrict into a hut.
Yep. And that's at least a thing. As it is right now, I don't know. He's just he doesn't really work with the army. Maybe he'll become more viable when some of those other units get released. If there were a couple of good light mortal units in the faction, or light non-elemental units in the faction, so that he can kind of push an early game scoring plan, he can very quickly become relevant. But right now, the options that make him useful just don't exist.
Yeah, that's a little sad. He's just kind of left out there.
It happens, though. I feel like he's part of a subfaction that isn't yet out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just something, that stuff happens sometimes. It's part of playing a living game. So I don't feel too bad about it. It's just, I mean, right now he's not really a model.
Yeah, but can we talk about the character on the box, the sorcerer queen?
I mean, yeah, we can.
Oh,
We can.
okay, sweet. Because
So her supremacy is Omnipotence, and I don't think that's a very good name for what it does.
okay, so what does it do? Because I'm trying to kill people.
So it allows the Warlord to target enemy regiments that are engaged with a Born of Flame or Born of Air regiment. So basically, if one of your elementals or character units is touching something, you can arc node onto that thing.
So they should just call it Arc Node.
Well, I mean, I assume that's trademarked, but
Oh yeah, probably. I
I
forget that game exists after I stopped playing it. It's like, oh yeah, War Machine. Like, and I look at Mark IV and I'm like, oh, I forgot how good you were, but also like you're currently not good. Please go back to the good times. Like, don't get me wrong. There's people who play Mark IV War Machine, and that's all fine and dandy. I'm just like, it is not the game for me.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
Don't worry. Steve will tell you everything about it.
Fair enough. Good old Steve.
I played like, I don't know, something like, I think 3 games of Mark IV War Machine when it first came out, and I was like, no, I'm good. I can't play this new system. It is not what I was looking for and how I want to play the game or interact with anything. So it kind of went from there.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Games die sometimes. I don't really know what to say. Like,
yeah,
Mark II was amazing, and then Colossals kind of ruined it because they just kind of took over the whole game. And then Mark III happened, and I played for like a month, and I don't know, it just didn't feel the same. It wasn't very good. So
yeah, like I enjoyed both Mark II and Mark. Like I started in Mark II, and I enjoyed both Mark II and Mark III. But like the big one that really hurt me was just the movement not working for that type of game. They changed how the movement worked. You took one model in a unit, you ran them up their movement distance, and then put within 2 inches all the other models that like of that unit, and it was like you just kind of teleported, and it was like this for such a precise like high tactical precision game. This is not how you want to be running stuff.
yeah, I didn't remember that they did that. They did
that in
like
Mark
that.
4.
Oh,
That's
okay.
how Mark 4 movement went. So like we
Yeah,
played it back
good.
when it was like, oh, this thing, like everything moves 6 inches, done, and then it went to like this guy runs 12, and then everyone else teleports around him, and you can have a guy teleport 2 inches ahead at the back of his base, and now his front of the base is basically 3 inches in front, and then next turn that guy moves, so you just you've kind of pushed 15 inches up the table instead of 12, and then you do that same thing again, and then it got weird with charges. I was just like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound good.
No, it was it turned into like a beer and pretzels game, and they're like, we want to change this for a more like to target a wider audience, and it's like, yeah, GW exists, like don't try and step on their toes. They've been around and doing it a lot longer.
It is a thing that keeps happening. So like games will build their competitive scene off of a type of player.
Yeah.
Or like they'll build their whole like game off of, you know, people who don't want to play Warhammer.
Yeah.
Honestly. Because if you don't want to go more towards Warhammer, if people are playing your game, they don't want to play Warhammer. Because they can play Warhammer. Every other game in the world is like a miniatures game is harder to play than Warhammer because it's harder to find opponents.
Yep.
So if somebody wants to play Warhammer, they're gonna. And if they don't want to play Warhammer, don't make them. Because you will lose them because they don't want to play Warhammer.
Yeah, and like a lot of people got pushed off from War Machine because it was just a worse version of Warhammer. And Warhammer also brought out 10th, and tons of people were excited for 10th edition. It was just like, okay, why would I play a worse version of 10th edition?
Yeah, I mean, if they make the game worse, like if they start making it Warhammer like, that's a problem.
Like even the movement system was worse, and it was just like, hey, this doesn't work for this style of game. They had another game called Warcaster came out, which used the same movement, and it worked for that because your regiments or your units kept coming back from the dead and like respawn from the back of your table edge. So it's like, okay, you can be a little more loosey goosey, and if your stuff dies, it's just coming back. But
right,
like when shit doesn't, it's way harder to like deal with stuff. And then they said that it was for what is it? Like, it's gonna make games faster because you just kind of throw your models up. It's like, no, people are now measuring more because they don't want their shit to die from this weird extra 3 or like 2 plus base size measurement. Like, you're making it even worse because now it's something that they can't just like put a stick down and measure. They got to put a stick down and then be like, hey, your base size is 40 mils plus that 2 inches, like shit like that. And they're like trying to keep things safe. So all the threat ranges went to shit, and it's way harder for people to just kind of like yeah, there's pre-measuring, but a lot of the time I would just visualize what everything is. Like, I got really good at knowing what distance is.
That's one of those things where like
it completely fucks it.
It's one of those things where the playtesters either didn't bring it up or the designers like didn't agree with them. And it like
I can
it
tell
came
you which
up,
one it was.
and it's just like somebody was like, "No, if you do this, this is gonna happen," because I know it got brought up, and then I'm almost certain that it was the designers that didn't agree with them.
Yep.
And they were like, "No, it'll make play faster." It's like, no, it won't. People will have to like
they're gonna
figure out where the thing could get moved to, and because all it takes is like a competitive player playing a couple of games with that system and being like, okay, well, what do I have to do to not get charged? And then being like, oh god, nope, this doesn't do what you intended at all. Because the idea's good.
Yeah.
The idea is fine. It's just the implementation isn't.
So like,
you know, like if it was pick one of your models, move it forward, no model can move further forward than that model, and you can you cloud them behind it, it would be fine.
Yeah, it would work. It would make sense. It'd be like, okay, that, you know, like the furthest guy forward is the max you're gonna go. So if I keep shooting the guy forward, I can push you back. And I believe I played Warhammer like 7th and 8th, more 7th, and I believe that's how Warhammer's movement worked. But they were like, no, you can just teleport in front of your own guy. And it's like, just completely fucked it up. And the thing, like that movement system with the teleportation in front, and they're like, it's not a teleport. No, it's a fucking teleport. Because you like just fucking place the model over there. It gets into like a ton of other rules and instances that were already pre-existing to War Machine that just don't work with this movement and just become really unintuitive. But if War Machine was, let's say, more like the minis were more durable, not physically wise, but like rules and stat wise, and like let's say like a single infantry guy could take like two to 3 hits and then he would die, and then like a medium base thing on average could take like 3 to 4 hits and then die, and then a large thing could take like 5 to 6 and die. Like, because you have to put more attacks in, the movement becomes less of a problem, because even if you have bad movement, your shit will just live, or you'll take less damage and still be relevant.
Or it becomes less important, because like in 40k, movement doesn't need to be that precise because everything's got 30-inch range guns.
What are you talking about? We're down like 48. We're doing the railgun just says the board.
Right.
It doesn't even have a range.
Like, bolt guns are 24, right? And then like I think it's 30 for the Primaris bolt gun. But yeah, like your movement doesn't have to be as precise because you're not getting out of range. You're gonna get shot.
Yeah. Like, and you just...
So, like, you're not doing these, like, precise threat ranges. Like, there's no, I gotta be 20.1 inches away from bosun, right? You're gonna get shot. You're on the table, things are gonna shoot you. You're playing against Tau, everything's range 48. That's the table.
Yeah, you're now using the table and whatever other abilities you have to mitigate that. and get
Yep.
to your opponent. Like, and
So
that
you can
becomes
get away
the game.
with less precise movement when final positioning is differently important. Like, it's still important because, you know, there's still a minis game, but it's more about being in cover or things like that instead of measuring threat ranges.
Yeah. And so the style of game changes while War Machine is still like, it's trying to go towards like a beer and pretzel way, but it's also like still that high tactical game, and it's like no, it isn't. Stop saying your game is it's still precise. All that stuff is still there. Like no, you lost it all in the edition change, and that's not what I want to play. Like I have a fucking civil engineer geomatic technologist background. All I do when I'm at work is high precision measuring and layout of stuff. Like I tell you, this is precisely where it's gonna go. And if you have a game system that doesn't give me that, I literally break as a person because my entire life is based around number. Number is precise. Like I fundamentally break as a person with like when people start doing bad measurements around me, and that's why I care about measurements and I use my sticks so much. Like I could do a whole movement like clean play rant, and that's why I try and value clean play so much.
Yeah. It's what I like and dislike TTS for that, because I like that
Tells you the number.
Yeah, I like that it tells you the number, and that like there's no am I overlapping, or like does your tape measure, stick out an eighth of an inch or whatever, from like because the metal thing on it is slightly bent,
Yeah, like it's
that
just
type of stuff. Like I'm not accusing those people of cheating. It's just some tape measures, like cheaper ones, the tape's measured to the end of the yellow part, and then like the metal at the end is thicker, and you will just gain an eighth of an inch because the metal at the end is thicker.
Or one of the ones is like parallax, and people like don't understand why they should be paying attention to like what parallax is and why that messes up your movements, because like you put you have the tape measure over the regiments, and then you're like looking at it from an angle, and so like that looks like it's in, and then it's like, well, that looks like you're probably looking at parallax right there. How about we just put a stick down? What's that distance? And you're out. Like it's why I use the sticks. I'm like, they're not gonna lie to me. They're not gonna have that ambiguity. I'm always just gonna try and be like, give me the number. And it's just, when there's not a clean way to do that, it just infuriates me. And there's times where I'm like watching, just kind of being a little sloppy, and I'm like, this is a little bit of a story, but like years ago, a bunch of us playing War Machine were going to go down to Fargo and play into a tournament there, what's like 3 hours away. And two of my buddies are getting a practice game into each other, and I'm just sitting there watching, and they completely botch their first and second turn. Or probably they botched their first turn. And I told them, like, come on, guys, this is bad. Like, we're going to be guests at a place. We got to play with clean play. We can't just do the sloppy shit. You guys both re-rack and redo it. And they're like, no. I'm like, no, re-rack and redo it. And they did, because it's like, this stuff matters. Like, you can take the 2 to 3, well, I wasn't going to say 2 to 3 extra seconds for some people, but like, for us who are trying to play well, it's like, it doesn't take that much extra time to just play cleanly to get value and just have clean play. Like, it's just going to benefit you as your game goes on, because you're going to make, I'm not going to say less positioning mistakes, but you're not going to have any ambiguity of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so it just makes a better play with your opponent when all your stuff is just smooth.
Yeah.
And that's what I value. Okay, Sorcerer.
All right.
We talked about Omnipotent.
So, Omnipotence it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be better, like, if the Maharaja had it, I would be way more excited about it, because I'd much rather cast, like, Burn to Cinders through it than any of the Sorcerer spells.
So, you can only have one Maharaja on a list. Are you just grabbing like sorcerers for your extra characters to like do rituals and shit with?
One per court. So I run one air, one fire, and one fire sork.
Oh, so you're double Maharaja-ing.
I am, yeah.
Oh man, you're gonna fusion dance those guys together, aren't you?
If I could, I would, and then they would become Maharaja.
Maharaja. This is
no, because it takes the first half of one of their names and the second half of the other one of their names, so it would just be Maharaja.
Even more power. Oh my god. All right. What she got for like spells that?
Okay, so she has target regiment can't be healed. Again, situational, not terrible.
Tool in the toolbox, sweet.
Yep, she has +2 scoring stance, which is the reason like goals are usable is because she can cast that spell on them.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives them Aura of Death 2 if they're in range of an objective zone. And then her good spell,
okay,
this is the one that you're casting all the time, Searing Sandstorm, gives an enemy -1 defense. And if they're touching a Born of Air unit, they also get -1 evasion.
Oh.
So it gives them -1 defense, though. That's the part that we care about.
Yeah, but even then, if something's like evasion 2, and that's all, that's it. You're like, ooh, here we go. Get rid of that stupid evasion stat.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you have to get a Born of Air unit into them on your Fire Sork. So, like, I'm not saying it'll never happen, but like, it's not worth planning around. It's something that you can sometimes do.
Okay, but yeah, -1 defense is actually a really good
ability
on anything that has it or in a faction that has it. I have found.
Yep. Yeah, it's great on Tempered Steel Shaper. It was actually one of the things I really liked about the Steel Shaper list when I started playing them. It was kind of the like surprise pick was just how much I liked the Steel Shaper itself.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to be like, yeah, it's a little bit of a concession that I have to bring it for the Warlord. But I actually just, the -1 defense is really good, and then like his buffs are really good for his own regiment. But
I've been playing him a bunch lately, and it's like I do enjoy what he's doing. Most of the time, though, people don't really end up within 12 of him, and I just cast like Harden 1 on his regiment just to get the token.
Yeah. People end up within 12 of them for me, usually.
Yeah, no, lately, when I've been playing against some of you guys from like the Competent crew and one or two of my other locals, it's like, alright, you guys are actually starting to do stuff to me. I can't just sit here and become a gun line. I actually have to be active.
Oh yeah, I mean you have to be active to get it. But yeah, I don't know. I usually have people end up within 12 of them. I usually harden for the first couple turns, sometimes like 3.
Yeah, because, like, people are still running at you and you get to just have free pot shots.
Yep.
But I do like how with him you can just draw him, cast Unmake it's Unmake Armor, and then draw in or Entourage into your Ballista and just be like, alright, basically I'm AP2 now, so have fun.
Yep. It's real good.
And then everything else attacking that regiment is also going to be +1 AP. What?
Yeah, so I put Jadoo on my sorcerer.
Okay, so
because I like to go with my first card, I like to have it be Conflag to Searing Sandstorm something to give it -1 defense, and that will activate Jadoo because the sorcerer cast a spell. And then I will go
okay.
and then I will go with the regiment. So it's been great. That was actually like the last minute change I made to the list. I had Jadoo on my Fire Maharaja before, and I switched it to the Sorcerer because that play is just really, really good. And I wanted to do it, and I did a bunch of times every game. It was really good.
Yeah, that cursed, dude.
So I haven't played with Air Sorcerer much, but
especially if you autocast it on, like, man, that's really good, because then you don't even have to worry about failing, and you're just printing money. God damn it.
Something's getting minus defense, and then I'm going 3 times. That's great. Well, I'm going once.
You scream Jadoo, and then you...
yeah, but the unit's going to do 3 activations.
Then you have some flame dancers run up, or flamecasters, and just obliterate something.
Yeah, or I charge clash, a March charge clash, or sometimes I charge dual clash. I did that with the Rakshasa. There's options, lots of options, because Elemental's a good rule.
Yeah, it is a really good rule.
So her air spells,
yeah.
She can give somebody a free reform, like it pseudo fluids them. It just immediately right now gives them a reform.
It's not bad. I remember talking to Cass about this one. I'm like, this is kind of it's actually a pretty good air spell.
I actually like that spell a lot. Tailwind is a weird spell. Like I'd say 95% of the time you're going to cast it on a friendly regiment to give them unstoppable. But every now and then there will be an enemy within 12 that you'll be like, I want them to reroll successful charge rolls.
Or force them into the March charge so that they can actually get there and not do any damage.
It will often force them into a March charge because it makes them like way more likely to fail. Like if you got somebody who's on like a 4, it's not a bad spell. It could come up. I don't think it would come up that often, but it would come up. Mm-hmm. And then the last spell is Wildfire, which is a hit per success. So this is an Air Sorc. She has one spell in each of her schools that like wants you to run the other element. So if you have a fire regiment touching the target of this air spell, they're in a zone, they cannot seize objective zones.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it's 1 hit per success nuke, but it doesn't scale. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't have any like bonus hits things. It doesn't have any AP. So it's just like an okay spell. It's also scaling. I love when hit spells are scaling. That's my favorite thing in the game.
Yeah, there's a couple spells that I'm like, why are you scaling? Like
this one, at least, it's because it can theoretically turn off scoring, but like it has to be in contact with an air unit. Like that effect doesn't come up much, because it has to be in contact with a fire unit. Mm-hmm. So then there were a couple of things that we didn't touch on, which is elementals. This is some of the like wombo combo stuff that Sorcerer Kings do. So Flamecasters have Infernal Marker. So if they shoot something, then you count as having rolled an additional success when you target that thing with a spell.
Yeah.
Sword Dancers have effectively the same thing. If they're in base to base with something, then it's an extra hit. And the air units have that too. The same effective rules. So you can definitely do the late in a round. All right, I'm gonna like march and shoot with my Flamecasters, and then I'm gonna march charge with my Sword Dancers, just like to get in there, and then I'm going to cast Burn to Cinders and then Conflag Burn to Cinders, and now you're like 2 automatic successes plus 3 bonus hits plus whatever you roll. So then you can just be doing like 9 hit spells. Like it's 9 hits off of Conflag. And that feels pretty bad for people.
Well, it's pretty brutal because whenever I cast a spell with Tempered Sorcerer with my Fireball, I get 1 to 2 successes, either fail or only do 2, like get my opponent roll 2 defense dice, and I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Right. So you roll bad and then you cry and
it's brutal. I was very sad.
Whatever.
My feelings are very hurt.
I believe it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm here to believe you.
Are you a believer?
I mean, yes.
Oh.
Then I saw her face.
Oh, okay, cool.
Now I'm a believer. Not a trace of doubt in my mind, Mess. Not a trace.
Alright, what other wacky combos you got for me?
I mean, that's kind of it. Like, it's just the army's pretty sweet about setting up these, like, you kind of want to combo all your stuff together.
Yeah.
And if you can set up the end of your turn, I think probably the biggest, like, tip that I can give to City States players is
Sorcerer Kings players?
Yeah, whatever army we're talking about.
They're the same thing anyway.
I'm tired now.
I know. Past your bedtime.
It's definitely past my bedtime. I am an old man.
I do old man things.
I get tired and I play Conquest. Not in that order. Maybe in that order? Probably. But yeah, Sorcerer Kings. A lot of armies, like, people have this tendency to pay a lot of attention to the early part of the turn in their stack. And Sorcerer Kings, I think it's really important for you to pay attention to the end of the turn. Like, you really want to set up the end of your stack for when you're going to get to do 3 or 4 things in a row for free. To really, like, maximize those things. So that's probably my biggest tip is, like, when you're building your command stack, think about the order of activation at the end of your turn. For, like, how you can maximize your spells.
No, that's fair, because you're gonna getting more cards with the ritual markers and everything, and just, like, if you just have more stuff, you're gonna be in a good spot to kind of just out-activate a lot of opponents.
Yep.
What's, like, a really good place to be.
Yeah. And if you are out-activating them, like, you really do, like, a classic one is you set it up so you have, like, your Rajakur go, and then your Flamecasters and your Sword Dancers, or, either or.
Mm-hmm.
But both of you can do it, and then you have your Maharaja go.
The Super Saiyan one was fusion danced with the other one, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're not fusion dancing, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, we have options here, guys.
Being brawly?
Can you imagine a Maharaja just, like, it's just like a monster. He's just the one monster base. It's like the new Fallen Divinity. It's like, oh, we put a character monster. This is our second one. It's just a brawly action figure. It's like, this place is Sorcerer Kings.
That'd be awesome.
That would be pretty good.
I really want to get the mini Maharaja, the one that's, like, on the tiny Mahout.
Dude, do you, like, I'll mail you one. I got 2.
Oh. I mean, nah, I don't really care, because I don't think I'm going to actually buy the factory plastic. But
dude's like, I want this thing, and I'm like, oh, I'll be nice to you. You want it? Like, I have 2 of them. I bought them more as a joke, just to kind of, like, have and maybe do something with, like, years from now, but I'm not really using them. Yeah,
so where I was going with that is not that I want the physical object, but what I want to do is play in a tournament with that as my ridden Mahout. Just on a monster stand, just that thing in the middle of the monster stand.
That was my idea for it, and why I bought 2 of them. Like, I was just gonna glue that to a monster stand and say that's my Mahout.
Because I think technically it's legal, and also it's hilarious.
Yeah, it is. Like, that's exactly why I bought 2 of them. So
yeah, that's all I want. That's all I wanted to do.
A faction I was never gonna play, but a mini I wanted to represent.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I didn't, like, actually want the one when you offered it. I just wanted to make a joke.
We're doing the same joke. Wow, look at us go.
Yep. I mean, it's a classic, I suppose. Doing something silly like that. That definitely is a wargamer thing.
Yeah, I remember one guy who made like a Nomad from War Machine into Batman. It was like the old metal one because he had a very particular pose. that allowed him to kind of like crouch, and so he's like Batjack. It's just, and he turned his big ass sword into like a big batarang. So I do like people like customizing stuff.
Yeah, me too. And not just paint jobs; those are cool, but
yeah, like real kit bash.
Everybody does that. Actually, that's not true. A very low percentage of wargamers actually paint their shit.
Yeah, and that's why we need painting requirements and everything, so that people paint their stuff.
Yeah. Like, I get it from... So, I always have this opinion on it, where people, like... I know we've talked about it too.
Yeah.
But it is somewhat... If, like, at the store level, or, like, smaller events are having painting requirements, they're doing it... They're hurting their community.
Yeah.
At big events, like conventions, I think that they're helping the game to have painted stuff, because I think it's significantly better advertisement for the game for people to see it painted. And that could be true at store level events, but it just really isn't.
No, like, there's not enough. There's not a critical mass. There's not enough people that to gatekeep and keep people away from playing the game at a local event or a store level. Like,
yeah, if like back in the day, there was a 40K. There was a store that didn't have very many tables. I think we could hold, or it. I was a player. I did not work at that store. I think it was like 16. I think we could scrape together 8 tables, but there was like not very much room. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot, and this was back in Minneapolis. And we had more players than that. Like, we always had extra people. So the store did put in a painting requirement, because they're like, well, it will advertise the game better, and we're already, like, we have, like, 25 signups for our 16-person tournaments, because we don't, and they didn't have room. Like, they couldn't run more.
You hit max capacity, but, like, if it's a... But if, like, because let's say you had 20 enough to fit 20 players, and you only had 14 players in your meta, and half of them are painted, like, why would you add a painting requirement? Like,
right, yeah. Like,
let everyone play, and that's...
Yep, the only reason to do it, the only reason to require painting is for advertising. Realistically. And, I mean, the game, I am a firm believer that I have more fun playing the game with and against painted models.
I sure as hell don't. Like, everything looks like numbers to me.
I mean, it all kind of looks like numbers to me too, but if I'm just trying to play a game purely for, like, strategy, card games are a lot less work. So, like, the painted models on a table, like, the like, tactile element and the, like, visuals of seeing the stuff out there adds to the fun. It's part of why I play minis games.
Yeah.
And painted stuff looks better, so it makes it a little bit more fun. It's not it's still a lot of fun though, so, like, I don't care if somebody else isn't painted. But I do really enjoy the games where we're both painted, and I always paint my stuff because I have a little more fun playing with my stuff when it's painted, because it just, like, tells the story better, it looks a little cooler. Helps.
So, yeah, like, we can get to a bit of a painting topic or conversation, but, like, I paint for myself, and not to be, like, faction completed. I paint to, like, get better at painting itself. And there are times where I want to do complicated things, but it's also, like, a time factor, and how well I'm at this technique, and how well I want to do a thing, because I don't like presenting kind of crappy models. Like, I have enough crappily painted models. I was learning how to paint and doing everything. I don't need to add more to that pile.
Yeah.
So I'm, like, when I paint, I'm looking to paint something of quality that I personally enjoy and had fun painting, and kind of achieving a level of quality for myself.
Yeah. See, I kind of do that, but I discovered that I don't enjoy... once, like, something has gotten well enough painted that I could play it at a GT.
Yeah, you don't care.
Well, no, it's just like my enjoyment of it falls off a cliff. So for me, it's been about getting to that level faster. So I've been my focus. Like I still have to grind because I still have to like look for something. But I've shifted my focus to trying to do it very, very quickly. And then as opposed to trying to be better, because I painted a couple of like skirmish game, like I guess lists. Because I don't know what else to call them, war bands, because they were like 6 models.
Yeah.
For Bushido to like a really high level, like 10-ish hours a guy. Like got the Micron pen out to like do the lining on all the cloaks. Like I did really good work on them. So I could do it, and I decided I was going to. I was like, all right, I'm gonna paint 2 hours a day. I'm gonna spend a week on each of these guys to really like put in the effort, and I was just gonna sit there and try to look for like a way I could improve it constantly. And I really enjoyed the first day of every one of those models, and I didn't enjoy the next 4 days. So I was like, well, I'm not gonna do something I don't enjoy for 40 hours again.
Yeah. So those Ashen Dawn I have?
Yeah.
I think I averaged about 6 hours per guy to get them to that level. The first 5 were fine because I probably spent longer on them because I was learning the whole technique on how to do them to that level. What was fun? The next 5 were god-awful because I had to get them done, then in a week, go to work, and then go to Adepticon. So I had to kind of get them done fast, but because I already painted the other 5 that way, I knew that I would never want them to be any other way, so I had to paint 5 of them like that, and it was fucking awful. And I hated every moment of it, and it was like, this sucks.
That is a big part of why I don't paint to that quality, because when like in the skirmish game, like it was Bushido, so I was painting this to models that were uniques. So I knew I would never have to duplicate the paint job. Because man, when you want to add something for a tournament and you have to duplicate the paint job, that is the worst feeling in the world. Like, you spent the time on it and you enjoyed it and whatever, you put in all of your effort, but now you have to like get these things ready for an event quickly, and you just hate all of those extra steps that you did that made the model look better. You're just sitting there cursing. It's like, damn, you passed me for trying hard.
Yeah, it's just like, it's dumb.
Yep. And so yeah, I'm a pretty I get it. I get it completely.
Well,
like I've been there once.
Well, you're gonna see the Dweg, like when I'm gonna paint all of Dweg home in 2 hours. You're gonna see something wild.
I'll be impressed.
Oh, it's gonna be a video and everything, because it's like, I figured out how I'm gonna do it, and I'm just, the only thing holding me back from doing currently is to build the rest of the minis. And Elden Ring,
Yep.
Shadow of the Orchard came out, so I have priorities.
Yeah. I get it.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm just dead. So yeah, we kind of covered everything. Do you want to talk about matchups for each faction? Just kind of quick, like things you should be aware of when fighting each faction with Sorcerer Kings, and then talk about your OP Sorcerer Kings list, what has caused people to rethink their lives.
I mean,
and then that should be good.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I can run through that pretty quickly. So Old Dominion are really the scariest of these armies, because you're an MSU list and their stuff tends to hang around a little too long, which is kind of frustrating. But the big key for Odie is to get. Well, I guess it really depends on their list.
Okay, let's go with
Like,
Mr. Bones Wild Ride, because that's the one I've recently learned about and almost bought because I found all the minis at the store the other day.
Yeah, like, one of the best things that you can do into, like, Old Dominion is get into the flank of the Bone Golems or the Praetorians, right?
Yeah.
Praetorians really, really don't enjoy having their defense reduced by 1 and then getting charged in the flank by a Rakshasa, because that is a lot of attacks that they get to save on 1s. And their Tenacious is just not nearly as exciting when they are taking like 12 saves on 1s. They're like, I guess I take 9 instead of 10.
Whoop-dee. There goes the 5 wounds, so what, they take a stand in a little bit?
Yep. And
Not
I mean,
bad.
you did some impacts, and they're gonna take Aura of Death and stuff like that. So it adds up. And then like Flamecasters shooting them in the flanks are really good because you can -1 defense with the Sorcerer, and then you get the flank shots. That's pretty
God.
great.
Give -1 defense and then send in the Rakshasa, and just
Yeah,
then their defense 0, and then you're like, aha! Well, especially in the flank.
Well, they're evasion 1
Oh. Oh.
because they don't have organs. That's the reasoning. It's literally the reasoning.
It's the lore, and they don't got anything to bleed
Yep.
from.
Well, I mean, it's like it's harder to like land critical blows on them because they don't have blood. So yeah, so I mean that's Old Dominion. Like most of the other factions, it's really just it's kind of the same thing. It's really threat range based, right? Like you out threat range a lot of things, so you just try to make a situation where they can't just charge you for free. And you make sure to protect your characters. It really doesn't. The game plan doesn't change that much. I castle a lot in. I usually try to bunker up around like all 3 characters kind of near each other. And because my opponent's likely to deploy away from them, but I'm faster, and honestly, like, that's fine. If they leave my characters alone, I'm happy. Let's see. Dweg can be kind of rough. Like, you're faster than them, though. So, and you have interference. They have interference too, but like at least you're taking less damage from their spells, and you're gonna be relying on Conflag to do most of your hits, or your like auto successes or whatever. So you have ways around interference better. I think Spires is actually a pretty good matchup because
Okay.
one, they don't have any wizards.
No, yeah, so you don't have to worry about interference.
Yeah, and like, so like if it's a drone block and you give them -1 defense, and you charge them in the flank with sword dancers, that does a ton of damage because they don't get any saves. They just get true damaged, and they die very, very fast. Like you can do like 20 wounds with like an MSU of sword dancers, so they hate that. And then like the Incarnate Sentinels. I mean, Incarnate Sentinels are pretty good, but they don't. But if you can get -1 defense on them, and then like triple action the Rakshasa in them to charge dual clash, so that they're on their sweet lower resolve and defense 3, they'll be saving on 2s, and then they'll because they declined a duel because they're not going to fight that duel.
Yeah.
And even if they do, they'll die, and then they'll still be low resolve, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, then they just eat it.
So you can really blow up the Inquisitor unit with the charge dual clash.
Yeah, that seems kind of with the like triple activate. It's just that's what you want to do. Just make them, and if they decline, you're making them reroll 6s, or no, they reroll 1.
Reroll 1s.
Yeah, it's still good.
I mean, and they're and they're resolve 2 instead of 5. Like the character in that unit is resolve 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the guys are resolve 3. So with terrifying, like they'll be on resolve 2. And if you give them -1 defense, and then you have cleave 1, they'll be on defense 2. So they'll take a lot of damage from that Rakshasa. And those are kind of like the two big threats. Leonin are good, but they don't have a lot of shots. So you're probably not going to take that much damage from them, and they're kind of short range, and Elemental lets you get on them pretty quick. Your biggest weakness is like high defense, and Nords don't have that, so like you're pretty happy against Nords.
That's good.
Like a lot of cleave 0 hits are just like the best thing ever into Nords, and that's what my list does. The list for anybody is it'll probably be in the description, but
send it to me in Discord, and then I'll add it in at the bottom.
Yeah. But it is a Maharaja Warlord with no upgrades. And then a Air Maharaja who has the Shu'laat upgrade, which lets you start a ritual on 2 instead of 1. And then the Sorcerer who has Jadoo.
Jadoo! Alright, that is fun to say.
It's fun to say. The name of the list is You Gotta do your Jadooty.
Alright, that's really good. The list is good when it has a pun name. It's like
you actually have Aaron to thank for that, because he was like, you have to come up with a good name for your list, and I was like, okay. So all 3 characters are in Rajakur, and then there's a Bakasura, and then there's 3 Flamecasters and 3 Sword Dancers. So it's pretty easy to remember. And everybody's an MSU. We don't pay for upgrades unless they're Jadoo or Shu'laat.
We only pay for the good stuff.
Wadroon's interesting. Like, Wad is pretty susceptible to cleave 0 hits as well.
Yeah,
so like that part's pretty good for you, but because Wad's very good at getting high evasion, so you're just gonna so you don't care. Like if they're evasion 3, you don't really you might as well do cleave 0s.
Yeah, you don't pay for it, and Flame Dancers don't pay for it.
Yep, and they have a lot of 3-action units as well. So I feel like Wad is probably one of your toughest matchups because of that. City-states run into the problem of they're weak to flanks, and just the ability to March, Charge, Clash means you're much more able to get flanks. So I feel like your matchup against City-states is pretty reasonable. There's not really Chariots are really good, but they're not that great against you. They're not doing anything that special. They're shooting you and you're taking damage, but you actually do pretty well into them just because you have that 5th wound on all your elementals.
Yeah, and then also you're Born to rule to heal some chip if you pop it off.
Right, and because a single chariot is probably not killing a stand because it's a single hit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like all the chariots go at the same time. A lot of times you can, heal that chip back more easily before you actually lose the stand to it. So you're harder to break, little things. Yeah. But I think you match up in the City-states pretty well. The mirror match, really just win priority. That's pretty helpful. Just roll better than them if you're playing against the same army.
That's the skill.
I mean, when you're in mirror matches,
they're always hard because it's just I know everything you do, you know everything I do, and it's
yeah, I mean, strategically, what are you gonna say? It's oh well, we're playing exactly the same list, so do it better than them.
Yeah, there's some stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, the tech on this is actually decent in the mirror match, even though it's, not the greatest. Like, it has better, like, one of them is like Curies and Old Dominion. Like, they do have a place in the mirror match, even though they are not like gonna, they're not insanitying everything to death or all that stuff. So, but you're still
I mean the large unit of carries is bad in the mirror match. Like in the mirror, you would rather have 2 MSU.
Yeah, but like
that's really the big question mark for me with the WAD list right now. I really like the big unit of carries, but the mirror does make it questionable. And like I do think there's value in tooling up for the mirror right now because OD is so good.
Yeah, what is something, but like even if you don't, like your Curies will still do work. They're not like completely useless, dead in the water kind of thing.
Yeah, but you'll lose to the OD list that did.
Yeah,
that's the problem, right? Like that's always like you when a faction is like the known best faction, like you kind of have to start making those choices.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I saw like a year or two back when like Dwag was a problem, but like Dwag wasn't topping any tournament. It was doing very well at tournaments, but it wasn't topping the tournaments because the people who were winning were prepared for that faction and had tools in their list to deal with it because they knew they had to play it. It was going to be at the top tables.
Yeah, I think Old Dominion are kind of in that boat right now. Like they're clearly better than everything else, but it's kind of pushing the game to having more shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Because Old Dominion is generally weak against shooting.
Well, it's not that great because shooting kind of crushes people. It really sucks. Ooh, I'm getting my ass fucked here now. Great. But yeah, it really, I don't know. I find shooting punishes a lot of like newer players and such, so it's really hard and difficult to kind of deal with that. And then a faction that's really strong that requires shooting to counter is
I don't think it's necessarily good for the game. But like it has kind of the meta has moved. 2 major things have moved the meta towards shooting again. And I don't think shooting is generally speaking as good as melee overall in the game right now. But I think everybody should have some, because otherwise, like, if you create a situation where I don't have to go to you, that's good for me. So if I have some shooting and you have no shooting, I have an advantage. But Old Dominion are weaker to shooting because they're not taking resolve anyway, so they're paying for not taking resolve, so they're effectively just they're mathematically less efficient into shooting. And the other thing that's caused shooting to kind of move up in the meta has been Ashen Dawn.
Yeah, because
I mean, obvious, like, he is blessed. So you have the 2 big problems recently have been the best answers for them are shooting. So we're getting a little bit more of a shooting meta now, which I think is part of the reason why like Sorcerer Kings have felt so good for me, because the triple action really does help counter that.
Yeah, because you can just blitz across the table and engage it, and if you can do it multiple times on a front, you shut down that shooting and start getting work in.
Yep.
Well, so let's like Dwag in Sorcerer Kings. You haven't talked about that one yet. Like, what are some tips for that matchup?
Oh man, it really depends on like what the Dwag list looks
Rollo
like.
Castle, or sorry, as I've been told, Jeff Castle.
Yeah, Jeff Castle.
Because like the media will know. I'm still calling it Rollo Castle in all my videos, but you know the list.
Yeah.
So it's actually, you know the list because it's actually your list. Ben made Rolo Castle. I was an awful person. I wasn't giving him any credit for it or anything. He's been stripped of all his laurels. Like, no one gives him anything, the poor guy. Let this be known that Ben is the creator of Rolo Castle, even though Rolo played it into me. And then I took it from Rolo because I thought it was an amazing list.
That list is sweet.
I love it.
So the problem, it's so hard. It's so hard to like give basic advice into Dweg. Because the advice into Dweg is you saturate them. I think the matchup is pretty good because one, you have interference.
Mm-hmm.
And they have interference too, but you have more tools for it, like I said earlier. And two, their ranges are pretty short. Like, a lot of 14-inch range things. And just the general meaning of, like, that enables you to, like, March, Charge, Clash from outside of take, aim, volley range.
Yeah.
Pretty effectively. And I think that is good for, like, I think that puts the Sorcerer King list in a pretty good spot. But, you know, AP2 is literally, like, the perfect number because they're all defense 3, evasion 1. So, and anytime you're trying to break a castle, like, terrain is going to play such a big part in how that goes down, terrain and scenario, that it's really hard to give specific advice. Like, you gotta look at the board and you gotta figure out where they're gonna have an opening.
And then you gotta take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, well, one of the biggest advice that just works in general, especially against Shooty Dweg, is, like, don't feed the castle one thing at a time. That's what it wants.
Yep.
Like, that's just general game advice.
Definitely always, like, that. So that is the big advantage that you get, is because you often have time against them. I think the biggest thing is they're not going to be rushing on zones that quickly to score. So you don't have to, like, push up too quickly. So you have, I feel like the matchup's pretty good, mostly because you have that extra turn where you're not pressured to, like, get involved in the game, to charge up your rituals, so that when you do go into them, you can do it on a double or triple ritual turn.
Yeah, and you can just get a lot of value.
Yeah. So you can either do, like, 2 to 3 turns in a row of double rituals, or, like, set it up to do, like, 2 turns in a row, 1 or 2 turns in a row. Well, I guess either, like, triple double or 2 triple ritual turns. And there's just a ton of value. Like, you can get so much out of doing that. And I think that might put you in a really good spot against them. I feel like the fact that their range is kind of short and their early scoring is kind of sus, gives you a pretty good matchup into it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always hard. It's always hard playing into a good shooting castle. You've always got to play it well.
Yeah, it's I've been doing a lot with my locals, and they've not been having the funnest of times. But, like, the locals who understand it, it's been quite a game. What I am glad to have.
Yeah.
Like, when it does.
But yeah, the problem is, like, the casuals or newer players, even if they're, like, competitive newer players, it's tough. It's a tough nut to crack, and it feels real bad when your stuff's just dying.
Yeah, and it's like you don't feel like you have an answer and out for this.
Yeah, I mean, at LVO, when I played against Deco, like, he killed I had 2 wounds left on the table. I won because I realized that I mathed out how much damage I was expected to take, and how many victory points I was going to get for it. And I just ran on the zones and literally just let him shoot me to death. But I got too far ahead on points, so I couldn't lose.
Yeah, and that's...
But, like, it wasn't... Like, that's not a fun game for anybody, really. I just, like, it wasn't fun for him, because he knew that he lost, and he knew he was going to kill all my stuff. And it wasn't fun for me, because I knew that I won, and I knew he was going to kill all my stuff.
Didn't... Yeah, that's, like... It doesn't make it like a cinematic ending. Like, it's a Pyrrhic victory, and no one likes Pyrrhic victories.
Right. So, I mean, I guess my game against Seraphos for the end of the like online tournament, that was a pretty Pyrrhic victory, but it was pretty fun.
I'm glad. Wasn't it the one where you just rolled like garbage for all of your reinforcements?
I did not roll very well for very many things that game. I failed a 2+ charge, but yeah, I was 2 for 8 on reinforcements and then 1 for 6 on 4s.
Oh my god.
And yeah, and like his Praetorians took something like they took normal damage from the Rakshasa, and then they took something in the neighborhood of like 40% of what they should have taken from like the rest of my turn. Like they took literally less than half of what was expected, and they lived because of it. And then like my Rakshasa died when that shouldn't have happened, to like very little output. It was just like I failed a 2-up charge. He had 7 attacks on 3s to kill 4 wounds of defense, 3 resolve, 3. He did that, which shouldn't happen. I should take like 2.
You're getting my dice, jeez, dude.
Which freed him up to shoot. Like, it was, and then the shooting like killed a whole unit when it should have done like 10, so it did like 5 over. It was, I don't remember all of it. It was pretty insane though. Like I got messages from people who have watched the game since, like while they were watching it, being like, "Oh man, I'm really sorry about your dice in this game," things like that. And then the surprise of like one guy literally was just like, "Oh my god, you won that!" Like he sent me messages throughout like his watching of the video like 4 or 5 times. Like just apologizing to me for my dice, and then he was like, "I can't believe you pulled that off." And I was like, "Honestly, man, a little bit. Me too."
Yeah, no. I remember you streamed that game, and I was at the airport, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll watch a little bit of it," and then it was kind of like, "All right, I gotta go. I gotta play the catch." And now I need to sit down and watch it while I edit or something.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'm glad.
Like I got a little frustrated about dice, but I didn't like yell or swear or whatever. I was like, "Oh, this is not helpful."
No.
You know, like that's usually what I say when I roll bad. I'm just like, "Well, that's not going to help, or that's going to make this a lot harder." Or, "Oh man, I don't know if I can come back from that." But like, you know, I'll point out the dice, but that's part of the game. Like I've accepted, like we play a dice game for a reason. So
yeah, it's today's Friday. Yesterday was Thursday. I had a local game, and I've kind of talked about it on like the Discord in a little bit, but I had both Tempered Sorcerers fail their fireball. Like they just rolled 1 success and then no successes on 7 dice, and I was just like completely deflated because right in front of me is the Ferromancer with brute drones, and I'm like, wow, that could have been like those guys dead. And stuff like that, and it's just like I just was like, well, it happened the second time, and I just got up and I just walked off and sat on a table, and I was like, I just need to sit here for a moment and just kind of come down from just being pissed off from just dice roll, and then I will come back and play the game, but I need to take a moment. Please leave me alone. And I just removed myself from the situation because I know I wasn't going to say or do anything good. And I was too, like I was too riled up to deal with what was going on. And I'm like, I just need to walk away because I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I've lost this game through over, like, stupid fucking dice, and, like, this really sucks. And it was a close game until turn, like, 5, and then I swept it back and closed it out. But it was like, man, you know, you look at stuff like that where you have 2 of your activations who just do nothing, and they're kind of key for your whole game plan, and it really sucks.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, wow, these guys should, like, even if you roll low, you're getting me a token. But, like, I didn't get no tokens, didn't get any damage out. Like, I didn't make my opponent roll for it, and I was just like, this fucking sucks.
Yep.
So yeah,
it's super frustrating. Like when your dice just betray you, it is very hard to just stay in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things I'm actually working on with Carl is always playing out games, even when the game's over.
Yeah, don't worry. He told me to play it out when he beat me on turn 3.
Yep.
And I was like, you know, we played it out. He had won. There's nothing I could do to stop him from winning, but I did kill, like, 90% of his army.
Yeah, and it gives you a lot of opportunities when you're playing from behind to learn things.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you're down, when you're in trouble, I mean, if you actually, like, pay attention to that game I played against Seraphos, I should have lost that game, right?
Oh, don't worry, I'll
it definitely looks like I was going to lose that game, and I thought I lost it, and he definitely thought I lost it. Like, he was, like, very sure he won. I could actually tell he was getting a little annoyed when I was spending time on my stack on one of the turns, because I'm pretty sure he thought the game was over. And I was, like, sitting there and I literally said it. I was like, I'm sorry, man. I'm doing some scenario math. And I think he was thinking, like, I was trying to math out whether or not I should just concede. Which, I guess kind of I was, but I was looking to see if there was any way for me to win. And, like, what I had to do exactly to win.
Yeah.
And, so, like, I guess if there had been no way, I probably would have conceded. But, I didn't. I did, in fact, find a way. And, like...
That's good.
And you should always look for it. Even if there isn't a way, you should still play it out. Because you can still find those little micro advantages to, like, learn for the next time. You know, it's something that you, like, learn in chess, I guess.
Well, the end game, like, I remember watching, like, Queen's Gambit's actually really good for this if you just want to watch a show, but, like, she wasn't doing well against, like, the big, like, not, like, yeah, like, the, antagonist of the show, because she didn't have a developed end game while he had been playing for, like, a bajillion years, so he did. And so he just, like, beat her in the end game. She had other issues, don't get me wrong, but, like, that was where his skill lied, and that's where he wanted to take it. And then she did her whole training montage and worked on her end game. Like, but yeah, end game play is something it's hard to reach the end game at a high level because high level games aren't something you get a lot of, and that's something I learned from War Machine is that. High level players love high level endgame because both players are still trying to, like, play it out and win and get an advantage. And so that game against Skillin, where my dice were like told me to go fuck myself, we still played it out. And, like, because I played that Carl game where he, like, basically beat me on turn 3, and he wanted the end game. I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do the end game. just because Carl did the end game, and then Skillen can get his end game, and then I won, and I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Yep.
So it's
that's why you always play it out, because like you can sometimes find those, like it's little things, but you never know. Like you never know when your opponent's gonna make a mistake too.
Yeah, and sometimes you're just looking for that is another big one. Like someone might just get overconfident and lose because they're overconfident because they're in a really good spot and they overstretch themselves, or they don't do a stack activation right because they think they have it in the bag, and so they can be like,
or they just roll bad. Sometimes the dice just come back around.
Yeah, there's
sometimes you just like roll a million saves, and then they roll like a million failures, and then somehow you have a unit that should definitely be dead, and they don't have a unit that should definitely be alive, and you're like, all of a sudden I'm back in. Because like they were relying on that, and then you're like, oh cool, I can get victory points, and I can maybe get this scenario, and it's you gotta always play that stuff out. Like sometimes it's better, sometimes it's more advantageous for your like development to just re-rack a game if something goes bad on like turn 3.
So I find re-racking early on is good for like developing your start, like your beginning of like the first 4 turns. Like
but your end game is you're gonna learn so much more from the end game.
Yeah, and there's
because you also learn the mid game from it, because you actually get to see how your early positioning choices developed into the end game, and I think that's something that people just simply don't do.
There's a bit of me that wants to like run just it's like, hey, my opponent and I, we like cut our list in half and then deploy it an extra 12 inches up the table and like just make an artificial end game.
Yeah.
But also like it's not representative of what actually happens and why things are where they are.
Yeah, and the scoring, it makes a major part. Like,
because if you're tied
how much scoring happened up till now is a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it puts pressure on one player over the other at that point, because it's like, well, are you ahead or are you not ahead? Are you, and
how much ahead, and things like that. Like it significantly changes stuff. Like I had when the one guy died to the like 7 attacks from that, I definitely shouldn't have died to, right? I should have taken like 2.6 wounds or something, and I took 4. Or 2.25. No, I think it's 2.6 because I think he was in tier 4. But whatever. If I don't die there, I score like he doesn't get to reform into the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the zone, and he wasn't. So I score 9 points that turn, and he scores 0, instead of scoring 4 points that turn, and him scoring 2. So, like, literally that one, after all the other shit had gone wrong, if that one stand lives by, like, not taking almost double damage of what it's supposed to, I'm, like, ahead on turn 8 instead of, like, having to be sneaky about it on turn 10.
Yeah, and close it out and not have your opponent notice. There's been times, like, if your opponent
and it's just like, that's a huge difference.
That is a huge difference. Like, there's been times where like, I'm pretty open about all the information on like all my stats and everything. Well, not pretty, like, I am open. If you ask me a question about my stuff, I'll answer it. But like, there are times where I'm doing stuff where it's like I want to win a game, and I'm like, I wonder if my opponent has noticed this thing. What will, like, if they put a regiment there, it'll stop me from winning. And it's like, nope, I guess I win.
Yep.
And that's strategy and tactics. Like, well, I'm going to take advantage of that mistake. I don't have to tell them that they made a mistake by not blocking that. Like, I'm going to take full advantage here. Like, That's my key to victory right there, is them not realizing that pushing their regiment up 3 inches instead of 2 was the answer for me to like get more stands on the zone to like outstand them and score it out at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff too, like people not realizing that, like people will march charge you when they should just double march, because if they double march, then you have to charge clash them, and you don't have the option to clash no inspire and then march afterwards. Which sure, if you clash no inspire, you probably don't kill me, but sometimes that's the only out. And I've had people march charge me and be like, haha, you're locked out of the zone. And I'm like, well, I guess I have to clash without inspiring. And then I kill them, and then I can march afterwards. And they're like, no, my cabbages. And I'm like, well, if you had just double marched, I couldn't have done that. And they're like, oh.
Yeah, it's really weird. There's times
like, I'll teach them, but like you got to make the choice.
Yeah, there's times where I'll just set up for more position. There's other times where I want to force the issue, and that's usually or I need to get either on the zone, or I need to like prevent something from moving or getting onto something more valuable. And that's usually when we'll just march charge stuff. Or I'm playing Steelforge and I can't roll a 2, and I just said, fuck it, we're gonna march charge everything, because at least you're in.
Yeah.
Because I can't roll a 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
yeah, it's after midnight, so I think I'm gonna have to call it here, sir.
I think you do too. So I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for the Sorcerer Kings chat and all our other conversations.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of conversation there that wasn't really about Sorcerer Kings.
No, but I think it's actually very helpful for a lot of players, and I hope people listen to this while hopefully enjoying me either kill or be killed in Elden Ring. So that'll be fun. Hey, I'm not doing too bad. I killed a bunch of bosses, and some of them took me like a couple attempts because I had to like hyper focus but also pay attention to you. It was kind of, I was like, fuck, this is gonna be a little hard. But I do have, so I have good news and bad news, Ben. Which one do you want first?
Good news.
Okay, you are not at 4 hours. Bad news, you beat Steve.
Oh, man.
So with that, I would like to thank everyone for watching / listening. Subscribe to BonkTable. Subscribe to Ben's Competent Conquest. We are both on the International Discord and the BonkTable Discord. You can find the link in the description below. And I hope everyone has a great day. Bye.
Bye.